Chapter 452. Why do you still have these useless yellow papers? Lone Moon glanced at him and thought of something. His eyes widened. Don't tell me these talismans are really useful? Not all of them. I Ching sent a trace of spirit chi over. In a short while the pile of talismans moved. A yellow talisman floated up and floated above his hand, faintly discernible. Holy shit, this fatty scribbles are really useful. Lone Moon took the talisman with some surprise. Although it was extremely unstable and not a complete aura-concealing talisman, it was half the battle. Wait. His hand stiffened. As if thinking of something, his eyes widened abruptly. I Ching then said word by word, "He's immortal." Holy shit. Lone Moon just remembered this. A mortal who didn't even know how to use spirit chi drew a messy talisman that could actually be effective. Either he had extraordinary qualifications or he had a rare treasure. Now it seemed that it was the latter. He was indeed not a simple fatty. No wonder Divine Imperial Sect was so anxious to find him. Forget it, it's none of our business. Lone Moon was not interested in these. He had seen too many cases of cultivators fighting for qualifications. Such things happened all the time in the 3,000 worlds. Besides, all causes and effects were recorded by the heavenly Tao. No matter good or evil, they had to be repaid. It was not good for them to interfere. Let's go back to the inn first. Tomorrow we'll go to other immortal cities to ask around. Lone Moon thought that he would never see that fatty again. After all, he was just a mortal. No matter how well he hid, he probably couldn't escape the search of a few soul formation cultivators. He didn't suddenly climb onto the roof beam of his house and shake the whole house until it creaked. Yet as he shook, he comforted himself, "They can't find me, can't find me, can't find me." Lone Moon who just entered the house. I Ching who just entered the house. "Hey, fatty." Shining raised her head and greeted the person above her. "Have you eaten?" A certain huge hunk that was lying on the roof beam trembled violently. In the next moment there was a loud crack. The roof beam that could no longer support a certain person's huge body was gloriously sacrificed. With a loud bang it crashed down. Even half of the roof above him collapsed with a crash. I Ching reacted quickly and pulled Shining into his arms. He took a few steps back and hid in a safe area. Lone Moon also stood to one side. For a moment the entire room was filled with dust. Lone Moon used a wind spell to disperse the dust in the room, revealing the mess on the ground and Fatty who was buried in the bricks. He seemed to be a little dizzy from the impact. He shook his head before looking at the person in front of him. "Shin? Miss Shin?" He was stunned for a moment and struggled to get up. "Why are you?" Before he could finish speaking, the sound of large footsteps came from not far away. It seemed that the commotion here had attracted the attention of others, and there were even some faint probing auras. What happened? Lone Moon turned to the side and looked out of the room. He saw the innkeeper leading a group of people who were dressed exactly like the cultivators in white they saw in the restaurant just now. They were hurrying towards them. The fatty who had just crawled up had his face drained of blood in an instant, becoming as pale as snow. His body, which weighed a few hundred kilograms, trembled even more violently. His eyes, which had been squeezed out by his fat, were now wide open, filled with terror. Shining took a bite of her fruit and walked directly to Lone Moon's side. She looked out with him but happened to be blocking Fatty's way. What happened? The white-robed cultivators appeared in front of them in an instant. They looked at Lone Moon suspiciously, skipped over Shining and Fatty, and looked at I Ching again. Their divine perception swept across the house more than 10 times, and after a while, they retracted their divine perception without finding anything. Why did this house suddenly collapse? Lone Moon glanced at a certain person who was nibbling on a fruit at the side. Something flashed across his eyes. What happened? I wanted to ask what happened. He turned to look at the innkeeper who followed behind him. He pointed to the room and asked angrily, "Innkeeper, this is your superior room? Fortunately, we didn't stay inside during the day. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened. Don't tell me you guys are a scammer?" No, no, no. Fellow Taoist, you've misunderstood." The innkeeper walked forward with a look of panic. He hurriedly apologized. "I'm sorry. We didn't think that this room would collapse. Why don't I get you another superior room?" "Just get another room?" Lone Moon laughed coldly. His expression was unforgiving. "Who would dare to stay in this room of yours? What if it collapses again? Then, how about I waive your rent for these few days?" Lone Moon raised his eyebrows. His expression softened a little. "There are 3 of us." "Waive all 3, waive all of them," the innkeeper hurriedly added. "That's more like it." The group of cultivators in white frowned, as if they couldn't stand Lone Moon's behavior. The cultivator who asked the question just now directly said, "All right, it's good that nothing happened. Oh yes, did you see anyone else just now?" Oh, Lone Moon asked. The cultivator seemed to want to say something. After a while, he held back and said, "Forget it." He scanned the room again. He still didn't find anything. He turned and left with the cultivators in white. The innkeeper stayed behind and politely led them to another undamaged room. Fatty followed behind Xining with a confused look on his face. His body was almost as big as two Xinyings, but the shop owner in front of him did not seem to notice that there was an extra person behind them. He did not even look at Fatty from start to finish. No, he didn't even look at Fatty and Lady Shin. "Have a good rest. I won't disturb you any further." The innkeeper smiled at them. Then he turned and walked away. Fatty was stunned. He looked back and forth at them. Suddenly he seemed to have understood something. His eyes brightened. He turned to look at Xining. Lady Shin, did you use an invisibility talisman on me?" Only an invisibility talisman could make one completely invisible. "No." Xining answered honestly. "Then, were those people blind?" "Invisibility talisman?" Lone Moon laughed. "Her entire body is an invisibility talisman. The kind that radiates." Xining, Huizhe, though he didn't understand, it sounded impressive. Huizhe looked at Xining again. He hurriedly cupped his fists at them. "Thank you for your help. Huizhe will always remember it. I will definitely repay you in the future." "No need." Lone Moon waved his hand nonchalantly. "You, on the other hand, why did you suddenly hide on the roof beam?" "It was still his room. I didn't do it on purpose." He hurriedly explained. "I was being chased. I accidentally hid in this inn. I really had nowhere to hide." He looked at him guiltily. "I didn't know you were staying in this inn." "Is that so?" Lone Moon glanced at him. "Those cultivators from Divine Imperial Sect were looking for you. They mobilized so many people. I don't think it's as simple as offending a steward." Huizhe faltered. His face paled. He clenched his fists by his side. But he didn't speak. "Forget it. I'm not interested in knowing about you." Lone Moon waved. "But we're leaving this immortal city tomorrow. You're on your own." Huizhe was shocked. His eyes were filled with panic. He turned to look at Xining. After hesitating for a while, he asked carefully, "Miss Shen, can I travel with you? Do you know where we're going? Just say travel?" Lone Moon asked. "It's all right." He hurriedly waved his hand. "I have nowhere to go anyway. Anywhere is fine." So he was trying to cling to them. Lone Moon was about to reject him when Xining suddenly said, "All right." "Xining." "Master." Lone Moon and I Ching called out unhappily. This fatty was obviously a big trouble. "Thank you, Miss Shin." Huizhe's face was wild with joy. He thought for a while and took out a pile of spirit stones. "I don't have anything to thank you. I only have some spirit stones. I wonder if they can be of use?" The next moment, Lone Moon stood up immediately. He patted Huizhe's shoulder and said, "Brother Fatty, what are you talking about? Isn't it just protecting you? No problem." "Xining, I Ching, where's your shame?" Chapter 453. Huizhe didn't expect that he could actually get out of the city safely, and in front of the two soul formation cultivators swaggering out of the city, the group of Divine Imperial Sect disciples at the city gates completely ignored him, as if collectively blind. He just followed behind Xining all the way out of the city gates. At first, he thought that it was because he was so focused on escaping that he didn't have time to clean up his disguise these few days, so she didn't recognize him. But after leaving the city, he couldn't help but look at himself by the river, only to realize that although he was dirty and messy, it wasn't to the extent of changing his appearance. Besides, cultivators didn't just recognize people by their appearance, more importantly their aura. But things were just so miraculous, yet no one recognized him. He couldn't help but look at Xining, who was nibbling on a fruit at the side, and then thought of the situation at the inn yesterday, and belatedly understood something. Miss Shin must have done something for him to be able to leave the city safely. He didn't expect that she was just a mortal, but had such means and was so kind, helping silently without asking for anything in return, so different from the other coquettish bitches. Huizhe was very touched, his eyes shining like a searchlight as he looked at Xining. A certain chef who was peeling a fruit at the side couldn't help but use force in his hand, and with a crack, the fruit knife made of black iron was directly broken into two halves. Cold air was released from all over his body towards Fatty, and the surrounding temperature dropped sharply. He knew it, this was also a little bitch who came to steal his master. Fu*K, He directly took a step forward and stood between the two, forcibly cutting off a certain person's fiery gaze, and handed the peeled fruit in his hand to Shining. Shining was stunned. She looked at Chef, who suddenly squeezed over, took the fruit, and turned to look behind him at Fatty, who was too big to block it all. Something flashed in her eyes and suddenly asked in a light tone, "Fatty, are you hungry?" Wuxia was stunned for a moment, not hungry. Just as he was about to answer, Shining had already turned and looked seriously at Lone Moon beside her, saying, "Father Nyo, Fatty is hungry, why don't we stop for a while and eat lunch first?" "Eat your sister." Lone Moon glared at her. "Are you sure it's me who is hungry, not you who wants to eat?" "That's enough. We just had breakfast an hour ago." "No. Father Nyo." Before he could finish, Shining added, "He's the boss. I really want to kick this guy down. What should I do? Are you here for work, or are you here for a vacation?" The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He looked at the sky but still conjured a spell and controlled the Dharma artifact to fly down and stop by a river. "Let's rest for a while, we'll continue on our way." With that said, he glared at Chef as if warning him. "Only rest, no cooking." I Ching, who was just about to take out the kitchen utensils, paused. He looked at his master, whose face fell instantly. While Father Nyo was not looking, he hurriedly took out a few bags of snacks and silently stuffed them into the storage bag beside Shining. These were all snacks that he had secretly stocked up on the streets for Master behind a certain parent's back. Before Father Nyo found out, he had quickly smuggled them away. The latter's eyes lit up and she gave him a thumbs up, silently giving him a thumbs up. Wuxia, who had seen the whole process, why did he suddenly feel that Miss Shen's life was not easy? Winky-faced Lone Moon went to the river to get some clean water. After some thought, he conjured a fire elemental spell to boil the water, and then cooled it to warm water. Only then did he walk back with 2 water bottles and pass the warm water to Shining. "Here. Cold water can cause diarrhea." He passed the other bottle to Chef to keep for cooking. After all, the water conjured by spells was not as good as natural water. After doing all this, Lone Moon finally had the time to look at Fatty, who still looked a little lost. "Brother Fatty." He smiled brightly at him, his entire body was clearly exuding a gentle aura. Yet Wuxia shivered for no reason. He faintly had the illusion that his spirit stones were flowing into Fatty's pocket. "Now that we've already left the immortal city, I wonder what plans Brother Fatty has from now on?" Lone Moon asked. "Is there a place you want to go? We can escort you there." Wuxia was stunned, the confusion on his face deepened. He wanted to say that he had nowhere to go, and that it didn't matter where he went. But he understood that he couldn't keep following them. After all, they were not related at all. Even Lady Shen and he had only met once. They had taken the risk to bring him out of danger twice, and that was already very good. Besides, he still had people behind him. He couldn't keep dragging them down. He thought about it, and after a while he gritted his teeth and said, I heard that in the southernmost region, there's a dense forest that is rarely visited. It's so deep that no one knows where to go and very few cultivators step into it. I'm sure the scenery inside must be very spectacular." His expression changed, but he squeezed out a silly smile. "I've always wanted to go and take a look. I wonder if the 3 of you can send me there?" "The southernmost region. Yes." He nodded hard, his eyes shining, but he still smiled and said, "It's just that it's quite a distance from here and there's no transportation array there, so it'll take a few days to get there by flying on a sword." "Are you sure you want to go to that kind of place?" Lone Moon frowned and looked at him with some surprise. "Do you know what kind of places are the dense forests that are rarely visited by people, and that even cultivators don't go to?" His expression stiffened, but he didn't answer. Lone Moon continued. "Such places are all places where high-level demon beasts run wild, or where demonic chi wreaks havoc, places where death is almost certain. Are you sure you want us to send you to such a place to seek death?" Wuxia's face instantly turned pale, without a trace of blood. "Do you believe that such a big piece of fat meat like you, once you enter that forest, not even a piece of dregs will be left?" His figure stiffened even more and he took a few deep breaths. After a while, the corners of his mouth twitched and he continued to laugh. Fellow Taoist, don't scare me, I'll be careful. And I have aura-concealing talismans." With that said, he continued to take out those messy talismans, and said in a feigned relaxed manner, "It'll be fine." Afraid that he wouldn't believe him, he thought about it and hurriedly added, "Don't worry about being implicated by me, just send me near the southern region, no need to go deep really." Lone Moon fell silent, and looked at the fatty who was smiling so ingratiatingly in front of him, and was instantly filled with irritation. He squeezed the fan in his hand and after a while he cursed under his breath. Shit. He clearly had no intention of caring about this fatty's lousy matters. He scanned him from head to toe. So, what exactly did you take from Divine Imperial Sect? Why did you have to hide in that kind of place? Fatty was stunned. WHW, at? We brought you out of the city to save you. Lone Moon sighed. Forget it, it was just a waste of time. Now that you've been saved, there's naturally no reason to send you to your death. Why don't you tell us exactly what happened on account of those spirit stones last night? Maybe we can help you. Chapter 454. Fatty stared blankly and subconsciously looked back at Shining, who was still chewing on snacks beside him. Many complicated emotions flashed across his face, and he couldn't tell what they were. For a moment something seemed to surge out of his eyes, but he hid it after a while. The corners of his mouth opened and closed a few times, and slowly returned to that silly look. Fellow Taoist, you've misunderstood. He scratched his head and smiled. I'm just a little curious about that place, so I want to look around. I don't have to go in. As for me and Divine Imperial Sect. He thought for a moment and suddenly reached out and took out a white pearl from under his belly. It was the one used to light up the cave. I did take one of their treasures. It's this vein pearl. Vein pearl. Lone Moon was shocked. Holy shit, this fatty was quite bold. What? Shining turned to look at Chef. A Dharma artifact that seals the entire spirit vein, I Ching explained softly. If this pearl is buried underground, it will only take a few years to form a spirit vein. Oh, did Fatty take away his spirit vein? In that case, it was normal for Divine Imperial Sect to chase after him so relentlessly. It's not just to form a spirit vein, Fatty continued. This pearl has other uses. With that said, he shook the pearl hard, causing all the fat on his body to tremble. The pearl also became brighter and brighter, and in a short while, balls of white light were shaken off and fell to the ground with a tinkling sound. Looking closely, there were a few more pieces of crystal clear transparent stones on the ground. Holy shit. Spirit stones. This was not just a spirit vein, this was practically a spirit stone mine. Hui Zhe kept the few spirit stones on the ground, and handed them over together with the pearl in his hand. As long as you send me to the southern land, I'll give you this vein pearl as a reward. How about that? Lone Moon. He suddenly felt like he was stabbed by a certain person's good character of treating money like dirt. In the next moment, two familiar gazes turned around and fixed on Father Nyo. What are you looking at me for? Lone Moon glared back reflexively. Am I such a money-minded person? Yes. Asterisk 2 replies instantly. Shit. Which side are you two on? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He resisted the urge to beat the two of them up. Had these two rascals forgotten who was the one who paid for their living expenses? He took 2 deep breaths but didn't take the vein pearl from the fatty's hand. Instead he snorted. No, I don't need it. He just liked to make money, not to print money. Why would he need a money printing machine? Moreover, there were so many spirit veins in the world. With his ability, it was easy for him to recycle a few spirit veins and make them into vein pearls. Why would he care about these? Things like spirit stones were only interesting if they were taken from the hands of others. Only those that were circulated could be called currency. But Fatty was a little anxious. He rubbed his stomach as if he was thinking about what else he had. I don't have anything else. Could it be that he could only... I said you don't need to. If you insist on going to the southern region, we won't stop you. His expression darkened. He guessed that the disciples of Divine Imperial Sect were chasing him not just for this vein pearl. Otherwise he wouldn't have given it away so easily. But since he didn't want to talk about it, there was no need for him to continue asking. He directly threw out the fan in his hand, which turned into a Dharma artifact. He carried the person and flew up. I've rested enough. Let's go. The few of them then adjusted their direction and flew all the way to the south. Fatty said that the terrain in the south was complicated and the spirit chi was thin. Few immortal cultivation sects would build their sects here, so there would be much fewer cultivators. Lone Moon originally thought that there would be fewer and fewer people chasing Fatty. But the strange thing was that the number of Divine Imperial Sect disciples they saw along the way increased instead of decreasing. Basically, there would be checkpoints dozens of miles away, and each checkpoint had an image recording stone with Fatty's image. Anyone who passed by would confirm it one by one. Their goal was very obvious, to catch Fatty. Lone Moon could even clearly sense the aura of high-level cultivators nearby. There were not only nascent soul cultivators, but also soul formation cultivators and even traveling immortals. There were quite a lot of people, and divine senses were searching everywhere from time to time. Lone Moon looked at Fatty's eyes more and more puzzled. He was immortal. Did he blow up their lair or steal their Tao partner? Did they need to mobilize so many capable people to stop him? There's an array barrier set up in front, blocking the way. I Ching stopped in the air on his sword and pointed to the front. Lone Moon frowned and could only stop. Are there so many divine imperial sect disciples? They didn't fly directly towards the south. Instead, because of Shining who had no sense of direction and because of Chef's love brain outbreak, they even took a few detours. But for some reason they could meet those divine imperial sect disciples everywhere. Although they didn't notice Fatty due to Xin Ying's presence, the other party seemed to be able to predict the future and could guess their direction every time. Wait. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Fatty beside him. Fatty, that vein bead from last time, have you been carrying it with you all the time? Yes. Huizhe nodded. If they didn't want it, he kept it. Let me see. Oh. Fatty directly took out the bead and handed it over without any wariness. Lone Moon took it and released his divine perception to explore it. He subconsciously transferred a bit of spirit chi into it, but a circular seal pattern suddenly rose on the vein bead. Tracing seal. I Ching was shocked. Wait, Father Nyo. Just as his voice fell, a white light suddenly shot up into the sky from the vein bead and exploded in the sky like fireworks, forming a pattern of flames, hanging in the air like a cloud. Lone Moon then realized that those people were chasing after this bead. No wonder they chased after it wherever they went. Someone's coming. Almost instantly he felt 7 or 8 unfamiliar auras flying towards this side. Their cultivations weren't low, all of them were soul formation and traveling immortals. It seemed like they couldn't escape. Shining, you and Fatty? He turned back and was about to say something, but there was a whoosh beside him. Chef had already carried Shining and retreated behind a tree 100 meters away. He also picked up Fatty who was at a loss and left him alone in the same place, still holding the vein bead that had just sent a signal in his hand. Lone Moon, damn it, this group of dog teammates with no loyalty. Degree. He didn't even have time to curse. In the next moment, with a few swishing sounds, a few figures landed and surrounded him. The people who came were all dressed in white with flame patterns embroidered on their sleeves. They were looking at him angrily. Lone Moon's face was smiling, but his heart was full of cursing. Fellow Taoists, why are you suddenly blocking my way? Chapter 455. All the cultivators' expressions were cold. A traveling immortal smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, our divine imperial sect lost something a few days ago. This item is very important to us. Please return it to us. Oh, you mean this? Lone Moon waved the vein pearl in his hand. I just happened to pass by and picked it up here. If it's yours, I'll return it to you as long as you show me the proof. Fellow Taoist is saying that you picked this vein pearl up? That person obviously didn't believe him. Yes. Then did you see anything else besides this item? No. That person frowned even deeper. He exchanged a look with the other cultivators and his face darkened. In an instant, 7 or 8 soul formation and traveling immortal auras pressed towards Lone Moon with shocking murderous intent. But Lone Moon didn't move at all. Those auras were like fists hitting cotton. There was no effect at all. Fellow Taoists, what are you doing? He laughed lightly. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone felt the aura they just released turn around and bounce back. The huge impact made them all take a step back. Who, exactly are you? They looked at him in disbelief. He clearly looked like a Foundation Establishment disciple, but could block their auras at the same time. Could it be that he was deliberately hiding his cultivation? Everyone's heart sank. To be able to hide his cultivation in front of them, he seemed to be a traveling immortal too. However, none of the people here recognized this person. I said, I'm just a passerby passing by. Are you messing with us? As soon as he finished speaking, another soul formation cultivator couldn't help but snort coldly. Where exactly did you hide him? Who are you talking about? You. That person seemed even angrier. He turned to look at everyone and said, no need to talk nonsense with him. He must be the one who hid him. Things are urgent. There are only 7 days left. Let's take him down first. With that said, they all summoned their Dharma artifacts. It looked like a big battle was inevitable. Yet the protagonists were not in a hurry. A certain master and disciple even sat down and watched calmly as Father Nyo acted cool. Huizhe was anxious to death. His whole body tensed up as he looked at the people in front of him. Aren't we going over to help? No hurry. Shining shook her head. Don't look down on Father Nyo. He could beat them until they went bankrupt. He wouldn't even leave them with their underwear. But Fatty was still uneasy. He hated himself for not having any cultivation. Those are all elders of Divine Imperial Sect. They are all soul formation and traveling immortal cultivations. Why don't I go out? I'm the one they want to capture. Shining turned to look at him, then reached out and stuffed something in her hand. Do you want some melon seeds? Fatty, is this the time to eat melon seeds? Winky Face the other side had already made their move. The dermic artifacts in their hands attacked Lone Moon, who was in the middle, bringing with them a shocking pressure. After all, they were all soul formation and traveling immortal cultivators who had been famous for a long time. Every one of them could be called a leading figure. Although they felt that the person in front of them was a little strange, they did not think that they would lose. He was about to be killed by everyone's spells. Suddenly, a golden light lit up beneath Lone Moon's feet. An array that no one had seen before appeared around him. Everyone felt their bodies stiffen. There was a shocking energy sweeping towards them. The dermic artifacts that were originally attacking the other side seemed to be frozen by something. They stopped at the edge of the array. Their hearts went cold. They had no time to be surprised. They cast spells again and continued to attack. In an instant, the sky was filled with flames, spirit swords, icicles, wind blades. All kinds of attacks fell down. But the person in the middle still did not move. He was about to be swallowed. Suddenly he frowned. He waved the fan in his hand. Instantly the array under his feet changed. Countless spells changed. The golden array immediately expanded and lit up with golden light. In an instant, the spells that filled the sky seemed to be swallowed up the moment they came into contact with the golden light of the array. They disappeared directly as if they had never existed. Not to mention being injured, the other party did not even move a corner of his clothes. Multiple arrays. The traveling immortal who spoke earlier was shocked. His face was full of disbelief. He did not expect that this person's array skills would be so profound. Not only did he set up such a strange array in an instant, but he also set up multiple arrays at once. The key thing was that they had never heard of an array that could absorb spells. In his heart, he was even more fearful of this person. Lone Moon, who was in the middle, laughed. He looked up at the various dermic artifacts around the array. Suddenly he waved his hand. Those high-grade spirit artifacts immediately left his control and fell into the other party's hands. He calmly took out his storage bag. In front of everyone he directly stuffed them into the bag. I'll collect some interest first. Everyone, although it was common for cultivators to kill others and steal their treasures, this was the first time they saw it so directly. The few of them did not have time to react. In the next moment they felt their bodies loosen. Their connection with the dermic artifacts was directly cut off. It was not a normal way of controlling spells. Even their senses were directly cut off. Because they had used their suppressive force to test this person before, they could see that this person's cultivation was not weak. Naturally, they did not hold back when they attacked. They all used the dermic artifacts that they were most comfortable with. Some even directly took out their own dermic artifacts. Now that their connection was suddenly cut off, everyone suffered different degrees of backlash. Their emotions were in turmoil. Their meridians were broken. What was worse were those who took out their dermic artifacts. Their dermic artifacts were always connected to their divine senses. Once they were cut off, it was as if their divine senses were cut off. They fell to the ground in pain. Supremacy you? Supremacy Chi. Everyone panicked. They looked at Lone Moon even more warily. They supported the people on the ground and took a few steps back. Who the hell are you? A passerby. Lone Moon still gave the same answer. He glanced at them. I don't know who you are looking for and I don't want to care. But if you want to find trouble with me, I don't mind practicing with you. Everyone's expression changed. They turned to look at the traveling immortal and hesitated. Was it really not him? Everyone don't listen to him. An injured soul formation cultivator snorted coldly. He looked at him with even more anger. I might not have been sure just now, but with his cultivation, I am sure that he was the one who took the people. Otherwise, why couldn't we find them for so many days? How could the meridian bead be in his hands? With that said, he looked at everyone meaningfully. Everyone was stunned. They reacted one after another and stared at Lone Moon. The traveling immortal in the middle had a cold expression. He took a step forward and said disapprovingly, Fellow Taoist, your cultivation is profound. You have already reached the half-step true immortal realm. But there is always someone better out there. This sacred arrival realm is not a place where you can mess around. His expression darkened. We are only looking for the people. Since you are not willing to hand them over, then don't blame us for not showing mercy." With that said, he directly conjured a seal. Suddenly the spirit chi in his body surged. A white light flew out from his body. In an instant, a Dharma artifact stopped above Lone Moon's head. The people behind him also conjured spells at the same time. A large amount of spirit chi went towards that Dharma artifact. It opened slowly. It was actually a big green umbrella. It was surrounded by white light. For a moment, a pressure stronger than before swept across a radius of several miles. Lone Moon frowned and looked up at that umbrella. This is Chapter 456. Immortal Artifact. I Ching, who was holding the melon seeds, was stunned. He did not expect an immortal artifact to appear in the lower realm, even though it was a low-level one. It's the soul-absorbing umbrella. Fatty, on the other hand, seemed to have thought of some horrifying scene. His face turned pale and his eyes filled with despair. That umbrella opened wider and wider, looking like it was about to be activated. Under the soul-absorbing umbrella, one's divine soul would be destroyed. Fellow Taoist Nyo would die. Fatty, you dash, stop. Shining hadn't finished speaking when Hui Zhe suddenly stood up and rushed in that direction anxiously. As he was rushing too fast, his leg turned and his body fell forward. He tumbled and rolled all the way out, crushing the weeds and shrubs on the ground. Perhaps it was because his entrance was too special, but everyone present was stunned. They watched as a meatball rolled over to them. Stop, stop. Fatty did not even have time to get up, but hurriedly shouted at the people who were intercepting him. His face was full of scratches and his eyes were still filled with fear. He quickly got up as he panted and stood in front of Lone Moon. "Elders, you've misunderstood. He did not do anything to me. I ran out on my own." Everyone was stunned. They looked at each other for a while and exchanged a few looks. After a while, they suddenly cupped their fists and bowed in Fatty's direction. "Greetings, Sect Master." Lone Moon, I Ching, Shining, what? Did he hear wrongly just now? Sect Master? Fatty. Fatty did not care about all this. Instead, he looked worriedly at the half-opened umbrella above his head and hurriedly looked at the leading traveling immortal. "Elder Jean, this fellow Taoist is just an itinerant cultivator I met these few days. We just happened to go to the southern land together. He did not capture me, so he is not a bad person. You better keep this soul-absorbing umbrella first." Elder Jean frowned. A trace of hesitation flashed across his eyes. After a while, he still cupped his fists and replied, "Since Sect Master says it's a misunderstanding, we will naturally obey." With that said, he raised his hand and conjured a seal, keeping the immortal artifact. Fatty heaved a sigh of relief and turned back to look at Lone Moon. Still smiling foolishly, he said, "Sorry, fellow Taoist, I've caused you trouble. They're here to take me back. This is all a misunderstanding." "You're the Sect Master?" Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe. He was actually the Sect Master of a sect. Was he from the blind sect? He laughed even more awkwardly. He scratched his head and said, "I'm sorry for hiding it from you all. I just wanted to come out and take a look, but I didn't want to be controlled by them. That's why I lied to you that I offended Divine Imperial Sect and hid from them all the way. Please don't take offense, fellow Taoist." Sect leader went out alone. We were very worried. The traveling immortal with the surname Jean stepped forward and said disapprovingly, "This world is full of dangers and people's hearts are unpredictable. Sect Master's status is different. Next time, don't take such risks and leave without permission." With that said, he looked at Lone Moon meaningfully. "I just want to relax." Fatty's face fell and he looked reluctant. "I've been in the sect for more than 10 years. It's too boring. If Sect Master wants to relax, you can send us to accompany you. It's too dangerous to be alone." I know. Fatty waved his hand impatiently. "I won't leave next time." Traveling immortal Jean frowned and continued, "Time is pressing now. 7 days later is the day of the sect's grand ceremony. Sect Master, please follow us back to the sect to preside over the overall situation." Fatty's body stiffened for a moment. Perhaps it was an illusion, but his face seemed to turn paler. After a while, he nodded slowly and said, "I understand." With that said, he turned to look at Lone Moon behind him and said with some guilt, "That fellow Taoist Nyo, I've troubled you these days. Let's bid farewell here." "Who's your fellow Taoist Nyo?" Lone Moon looked at the people present and his eyes darkened. "You're going back with them?" "Yes." He smiled even more brightly. "Something happened in the sect. Otherwise they wouldn't be so anxious to find me. Naturally, I have to rush back. Let's meet again if fate allows it. Lone Moon nodded. He tossed the vein bead in his hand and stuffed it back into his hand. Then we'll meet again. Fatty wanted to give the bead to him, but thinking of his look of disdain, he could only take it back. He subconsciously looked towards the forest at the side. Halfway through, he stopped himself and turned to walk towards those cultivators without saying a word. Those cultivators were still looking at Lone Moon suspiciously. They didn't know if there was really an urgent matter, or if they didn't want Fatty to know their dissatisfaction. They didn't say anything more. They directly flew away with Fatty. Aren't you going to keep him? Xining, who had just walked over, asked casually. He wants to leave himself. Why should I keep him? Wasting rice. And isn't he the sect master of Divine Imperial Sect? Nothing will happen to him. Xining looked at the group of people who flew away. Her eyes darkened. After a while she replied, Oh, have you finished eating your melon seeds? Lone Moon glared at the two heartless little ones. No. Xining spread out the melon seeds in her palm. There's still a handful left. Want some? Get lost. Motherf asterisk her. I'll eat you to death. Lone Moon took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. Then he flew up on his sword. Let's go. To where? Choose the biggest immortal city to settle down. Huh? Why? I just received a bunch of Dharma artifacts from that group of people. Let's go sell them first. Xining, I Ching, alright, this is very Father Nyo. Lone Moon spent 6 days dragging a certain lazy person to more than 10 immortal cities. He went to almost all the famous immortal cities in this world. But the strange thing was he still didn't find anything. Not to mention finding anything unusual, because Divine Imperial Sect was the biggest sect. There were very few disputes between sects in this small world. Shit, why did Heavenly Tao close the realm gate? Lone Moon was a little frustrated. It wasn't a solution to keep searching blindly. He turned to look at Chef beside him. Chef, did you find anything? No. I Ching shook his head too. Could it be that Heavenly Tao made a mistake? Lone Moon frowned. Something like a program gone wrong? Otherwise, closing the realm gate for no reason, who knows what went wrong? I know. Xining suddenly spoke. What? The two of them were shocked and turned to look at Xining. Xining explained in a low voice, although the nomological power doesn't have intelligence, it has the inertia of warning. In other words, it will tell us the main cause of the matter. How did it tell us? How did it tell us? Lone Moon looked confused. Xining tilted her head. Didn't I tell you? The moment we arrived in this world, it had already sent the main cause of affecting the nomological power to the person with the highest authority. The highest authority? Xining. In other words, the main cause was Fatty. 2-inch, that's why I asked you to bring him along. Xining took a bite of the fruit. Lone Moon, I Ching. He was suddenly very worried about the future of this plane. Such an important matter, why didn't you say it earlier? A degree. Chapter 457. Lone Moon didn't understand how a mortal like Fatty had anything to do with the nomological power, and could even force the Heavenly Tao to close the realm gate. But now they had to quickly find the person and study him. Fortunately, they knew the location of the other party. Lone Moon complained about the unreliable Xining as he rushed in the direction of Divine Imperial Sect where he met Fatty. Finally, the next morning he reached the vicinity of that immortal city. Unexpectedly, it was very lively inside and outside the city today. Cultivators could be seen everywhere, many times more than a few days ago. Lone Moon was puzzled as he rushed in the direction of the branch of Divine Imperial Sect. But the closer he got to Divine Imperial Sect, the more people there were, especially at the foot of the mountain where Divine Imperial Sect was already surrounded by cultivators. Most of them were Foundation Establishment and Golden Core cultivators, but none of them were above Nascent Soul. These people were either in groups of 3 to 5 or meditating alone, but all of them were facing the same direction. As if they were waiting for something? Lone Moon, who originally planned to go up the mountain quietly, hesitated, and smiled as he asked a cultivator beside him, Fellow Taoist, I happened to pass by this place. May I ask what day it is today? Why is it so lively? Could it be that something big happened in Divine Imperial Sect? You don't know? That cultivator looked at him with some surprise. Then you're really lucky. Perfected Yu Su of Divine Imperial Sect descended to Soul Formation today, so it's the day of his ascension ceremony. All the sects have sent people to congratulate him. Disciples of small sects like us couldn't get invitations, so we can only hang around outside the sect. Ascension ceremony? Was this the big event that those cultivators were talking about? Lone Moon frowned, suddenly feeling that something was wrong with his words, and subconsciously asked, I'm ignorant, I didn't know that Supremacy Yusu has such a wide circle of friends and such high prestige? Even disciples who didn't get invitations voluntarily gathered at the foot of the mountain to congratulate him? And so many people came? That cultivator was stunned and looked back with a strange expression and suddenly laughed. Jesuke, how is that possible? He gave him a look that said, Are you stupid? Looked around and then lowered his voice. What are you thinking? We are just low-level disciples. How could we have the opportunity to get to know a nascent soul Taoist master? The people here probably don't even know what Yusu looks like. How could they possibly come to congratulate him? I'm just waiting here for the moment he successfully enters the soul formation stage. I want to see if I can comprehend it by chance and improve my cultivation. Lone Moon paused. You mean he hasn't passed the tribulation yet? Then why would he need to hold an ascension ceremony? What if he was struck to death? The higher the rank, the higher the mortality rate. Additionally, should he fail, the nearby cultivators would be easily implicated. Those with high cultivation bases would be fine, but those with low cultivation bases would be reduced to ash. How could they have the courage to come and watch? Which mountain cave did you come from? How come you don't know anything? The cultivator was a little annoyed by the questions and looked at him as if he was looking at a country bumpkin. Didn't you hear that person's surname is you? They were one of the 6 great clans, and rumor had it that they were of the direct line of descent. With their talent, how could they have failed the tribulation? Just wait patiently, it's about to begin. With that said, he ignored him and sat down cross-legged, staring seriously in the direction of the mountain with the others. The more Lone Moon listened, the weirder he felt. Why was it that breaking through from nascent soul to soul formation was such an easy thing in these people's eyes? They hadn't even passed the thunder tribulation, and they were already preparing for the ascension ceremony. Lone Moon and Chef exchanged a look. Both of them felt that this was a little strange. So they directly left the crowd, stuck on the aura-concealing talisman, picked up Shining and flew towards Divine Imperial Sect. The 3 of them directly followed behind the disciples and easily made their way to the square. Because they had an invisibility cheat with them, no one suspected their identity. From afar, they saw a person sitting in the middle of the square, a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. There was no one within a 100-meter radius of him, but there was a huge defensive array carved under his feet. There were also more than 10 Dharma artifacts around him. It was obvious that he was the cultivator going through the tribulation. Lone Moon turned to look to the right. There were more than 10 people sitting on the high platform there. Most of them were soul formation cultivators, and there were 3 traveling immortals. One look and he could tell that their status was extraordinary. They should be the leadership team of Divine Imperial Sect, and cultivators from other sects who came to congratulate them. Looking closely, 7 or 8 of them looked a little familiar. They were the few people who picked up Fatty that day. But the strange thing was, Fatty wasn't among that group of people. He subconsciously frowned. Wasn't Fatty the sect master? And the big matter that those people mentioned before should be this ascension ceremony. Why was he not here at the critical moment? Regarding the reason why Fatty became the sect master, Lone Moon did ask around these few days out of curiosity. The fact that Divine Imperial Sect had a mortal sect master was not a secret. It was extremely easy to find out. This had something to do with the origin of Divine Imperial Sect. It was rumored that the ancestors of the 6 aristocratic families had once received the grace of Fatty's ancestor, who saved them from danger. So the 6 aristocratic families passed down their ancestral teachings, asking their descendants to treat the descendants of their benefactor kindly. Later, the 6 aristocratic families united to form Divine Imperial Sect. To show respect to their benefactor, every generation of Divine Imperial Sect master was a descendant of the benefactor. But for some reason, the branch of Huizei's family had never had many descendants. They all had only one descendant. And their cultivation aptitude was extremely poor. Not to mention nascent soul or soul formation, even if the entire sect used up all their power, they couldn't make a golden core cultivator out of them. All of them died early. Lone Moon didn't care at first. But ever since Shining said that Fatty was the main reason why the nomological power was abnormal, he felt that this was a little strange. Maybe it had something to do with that legendary poor aptitude and the bloodline that could only be passed down to one person. So they had to find Fatty as soon as possible. Looking around carefully again, and after confirming that Fatty wasn't among them, he directly activated his ability and released his divine perception, wanting to directly detect Fatty's location. But the sky suddenly darkened. Large thunderclouds gathered in the sky. Faint sounds of thunder could be heard, and white flashes of light surged between the clouds. The lightning tribulation has begun. I Ching reminded. Lone Moon could only retract his hand. The spirit chi of the lightning tribulation would affect his detection spells. He could only wait for the lightning to finish. The thunderclouds above did not brew for long. In a short while, a white bolt of lightning struck down from the sky, hitting the person in the middle. Instantly, the entire divine imperial sect was reflected in a sheet of white light. Before the light dissipated, bolts of lightning struck down one after another, each more ferocious than the one before. The surging spiritual pressure in the surroundings forced some low-level disciples to raise their defenses and retreat. There were fewer and fewer people surrounding them. In the end, there were only a dozen or so soul formation and traveling immortals left in front of them on the right. Relying on the aura-concealing talisman and the cheat, Lone Moon directly stood beside a rock and hid for a while. Anyway, no one could see him. As he looked for Fatty, he glanced at the person in the middle who was undergoing the tribulation. Chapter 458. The person who was going through the tribulation seemed to be in great pain. After less than 20 bolts of lightning, his skin and flesh were already torn. Even the Dharma artifacts around him were used up. He couldn't even maintain his spirit chi to resist the heavenly lightning. Lone Moon was a little annoyed. What happened to being stable? From the looks of it, if he had no other way, he probably wouldn't be able to survive more than 10 bolts of lightning. He would be smashed into pieces. Indeed, after less than 5 bolts of lightning, he couldn't hold on anymore. He fell to the ground. The spirit chi on his body began to dissipate. The nascent soul in his body was also showing signs of dissipating. Another bolt of lightning fell from the sky, about to completely destroy his nascent soul. Suddenly, the ground lit up with red light. The array under his feet was activated instantly. Blinding red light shot up into the sky, blocking the life-threatening heavenly lightning. Huh! Lone Moon was stunned. Chef, this array is? An ordinary defensive array. Chef nodded in response. But he frowned. Was it an illusion? Why did it feel like the light from the array just now reduced the power of the lightning tribulation? Without waiting for them to think about it, one lightning bolt after another struck down, but they were all blocked by the defensive array formation, and did not cause too much harm to the people inside. The cultivator who was experiencing the tribulation in the middle got a chance to breathe, and the injuries on his body began to heal at a visible rate. He was using the spiritual energy in the tribulation lightning to repair his body. In a short while, the horrible wounds on his body were almost gone. When all 81 bolts of tribulation lightning had struck down, the tribulation clouds began to disperse, scattering large patches of colorful light. Thick spirit chi filled the entire divine imperial sect, and the cultivators in the middle directly rose to the soul formation realm. Look at the sky. Someone suddenly exclaimed. It's a phenomenon, a heaven and earth phenomenon. Lone Moon and I Ching also looked up subconsciously. Indeed, the sky that was originally full of colorful light suddenly gathered into a faint dragon-shaped shadow. It occupied the sky above the entire sect, emitting a faint golden light. The corner of I Ching's mouth twitched. He frowned awkwardly. It was indeed a heaven and earth phenomenon. This kind of phenomenon would only appear when people with great providence were going through a tribulation. It was the recognition of the heavenly Tao to the person who was going through the tribulation. When the spirit chi in the tribulation thunder reached a certain level, far surpassing the spirit chi and even the immortal chi, there was a faint tendency to transform into God power. Only then would the shadow of the God race appear. It was just that the person who had just undergone the tribulation didn't have any amazing luck on him. Even his successful tribulation required some luck, but he still triggered a worldly phenomenon? Sure enough, there was a problem with the rule force of this small world. The dragon-shaped phenomenon only appeared for an instant and disappeared in less than 5 seconds. At the same time, a special spiritual energy that was fresh and light swept over. In an instant, it was as if spring had returned to the earth. The entire divine imperial sect was instantly filled with large patches of fresh flowers. Even beneath Lone Moon's feet, there was a large clump of flowers. The high-grade cultivators on the platform on the right had already made their way to the center of the square to congratulate the successful cultivator. In an instant, a large number of people gathered around. Lone Moon was just about to say that they should hurry and find Fatty now, but Shining, who had been watching the show, suddenly stopped. He looked at the fruit in his hand and asked, "Do you guys smell something?" Lone Moon subconsciously inhaled, but his nose was full of pollen. Cough cough. What smell? He only smelled pollen, and it was a mixture of flavors. But I Ching's expression suddenly darkened and he said coldly, "The smell of blood." What? Lone Moon was shocked. He released his divine perception to search and instantly found the problem. His eyes widened. It's the array on the ground. In the spirit chi that was used to draw the array, there was also a thick smell of blood. It was actually a blood array. The smell of blood is coming from the array. No. The two were just about to go over to take a closer look, but Xining suddenly pulled them and threw the core of the fruit in her hand down. It's coming from the ground. The two were stunned and immediately reacted. Lone Moon directly conjured a spell that pierced through the ground, and the figures of the three disappeared on the spot. In the next moment they appeared directly in a patch of red light. This was directly below the square. It looked like an enclosed space, but it was as spacious as above. There was still a huge red array lit up on the ground, and the surroundings were reflected in a blood-red color. And in the middle of the array lay a rotund figure, his body lit up with a binding spell, and his aura was so weak that it was almost indiscernible. "Fatty!" The three of them cried out in alarm. In a flash they were in the middle of the array. Lone Moon directly waved his hand and broke the binding spell. On closer inspection they discovered that there were several wounds on his limbs so deep that the bones could be seen. Bright red blood was continuously flowing out of the wounds, into the array below him, and the blood gathered in the center, as if it was weightless, endlessly flowing upwards. And above them was the defensive array that the person had just gone through the tribulation. Only then did they understand whose blood was used for the blood array above. Suddenly, an inexplicable anger surged in his heart. I Ching waved a few sword chi and struck at the surrounding blood-sucking array, and the array immediately dimmed. He cast a few spells and stopped the blood on Fatty's body. But he still did not wake up, and the aura on his body was also becoming weaker and weaker. His whole body was cold as if he was going to die in the next moment. I Ching cast a spell to retain the almost dissipating vitality on his body. Lone Moon also took out an elixir and hurriedly forced it into his mouth, and then used a bit of spirit chi to help him dissolve the elixir's effects. Only then did his complexion slowly improve. "Hey, Fatty!" Xining shouted a few times. After a while, Huizhe slowly opened his eyes and looked at Xining blankly. "Miss Xin? Am I dreaming?" His eyes were floating as if he had not woken up at all. "Am I already dead? But how can I see, or—" He was shocked, and his eyes, which were squeezed especially small by his fat, widened in an instant. The next moment tears flowed down like beans. "How did you die too?" With that said, he did not know where he got the strength from, but he hugged Xining and started crying loudly. "Wah, Miss Xin, how did you die too? Did I implicate you? Don't die. I don't want to die. How did you die? Wah, can you come back to life?" Lone Moon, Yi Xiao, Xining, I Ching clenched his fist and a series of cracking sounds could be heard. He could not help but directly grab a certain person's collar with one hand, like tearing off dog skin plaster. He tore the person from Xinying's body and threw him towards Father Niu. He turned around and hugged his master like a baby. "Get lost. Little bitch. Do you want to die again? I don't mind sending you on your way." Fatty was frozen by his cold gaze. He looked blankly at Lone Moon who was supporting him, then at I Ching and finally at Xining. "Fellow Taoist Niu? Lone Moon, fellow Taoist chef? I Ching, where the hell did you come up with these two names, hey?" Chapter 459. "Why are you here too?" Fatty finally reacted. I'm not dead." "Almost," Lone Moon replied. His eyes darkened as he looked at Fatty and asked, "What exactly happened? Who trapped you here? In this array formation? Is it trying to use you as a blood sacrifice?" Fatty faltered. As if recalling something, his face turned pale. He hurriedly said, "Go, leave this place quickly. They'll be back soon." "Who are you talking about? Divine Imperial Sect?" "There's no time to explain." He looked at the passage on the right in horror. He pushed the three of them hard. "If you don't leave now, you won't be able to. I beg you, leave quickly. There are too many of them. You can't beat them." "Someone's coming," I Ching suddenly said. 3 traveling immortals. Fatty's face turned even paler. He looked like the sky was falling. "What do we do?" "Leave here first," Lone Moon said. "It's no use." Fatty shook his head in despair. "There's only one passage on the right. We can't get out." "Who said we're going to the right passage?" Lone Moon gave I Ching a look. Fatty faltered. Before he could react, the 4 of them flashed and disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, They appeared in the sky above Divine Imperial Sect. Loneman's concealment array was activated instantly. The crowd below had yet to disperse. They surrounded the cultivator who had just broken through to the soul formation stage. Everyone's faces were filled with joy. Their smiles were especially irritating. Xinying's eyes narrowed. "Chef, yes, master." I Ching nodded. His figure flashed and he flew out directly. In an instant he transformed into his original form. A huge golden dragon appeared in the sky. A dragon's roar reverberated through the clouds, causing the entire world to shake. The noisy crowd fell silent. They raised their heads in disbelief and looked at the huge golden dragon hidden in the clouds. Dragon. Dragon, the phenomenon just now. Isn't it over? Before the crowd could react, the huge dragon's body glowed. With a loud boom, a purple bolt of lightning fell from the sky and struck directly at the person who had just gone through the tribulation. Before the people surrounding them could react, they heard the cultivator in the middle scream in pain. The spiritual energy he had just condensed dissipated, and his cultivation level dropped at a speed visible to the naked eye. From the early stage of soul formation he fell all the way to the nascent soul stage, then the golden core stage. He was about to fall into the foundation establishment stage. Only then did the surrounding cultivators react and stabilize his cultivation. This unforeseen event happened so suddenly that everyone didn't even have time to react before the soul formation cultivator dropped to the golden core cultivator. When everyone looked up again, the giant dragon in the sky had disappeared as if it had never been there. Heaven and earth phenomenon: buy one get one free. In the eyes of cultivators, the fatty's injuries were actually superficial wounds that were the least important. Even if he was just an aura refining cultivator of the lowest level, a few dozen scars on his body would not be a problem at all. However, the fatty was just a mortal. Furthermore, he didn't even have the slightest bit of spirit chi, the kind that could kill him if he caught a serious cold. The bone-deep wounds on his body caused a large amount of blood loss, and under the situation where there was no spirit chi in his body, even his vitality dissipated. If they found him a little later, or if it wasn't them who went, then they might really have to go to the underworld to find him. Lone Moon looked at the fatty in front of him, who was like a lump of meat, occupying the whole bed and finally completely awake. He felt a little regret in his heart. Back then he did see that there was something strange about the fatty. After knowing him for a while, he shouldn't have allowed him to be brought back. The elixir he stuffed into his hands was an immortal-grade elixir refined by Boss Lon, mainly because he really didn't have any elixirs from the lower world on him. The injuries on the fatty's body were healed, but as a mortal, he still couldn't withstand the medicinal effects of the elixir. Halfway through bringing him away, he fainted again. In the end, it was Xinying who found him in time and patted him, causing him to spit out the half-dissolved elixir. Only then did he wake up. After realizing that they had already left Divine Imperial Sect, the fatty was a little happy at first, but in less than 2 seconds his expression fell instantly. His fat face was almost squeezed into a lump of meat, his expression was complicated, and his eyes were full of worry as he looked at them. He couldn't help but hurriedly persuade them. "Miss Shen, why don't you send me back? Then stay far away, pretend that you don't know anything, and don't mention to anyone that you saw me." "You want to go back?" Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe, a little angry that he didn't want to fight back. "And then let someone perform a blood sacrifice again?" Hui Zhe's face paled as if his Achilles heel had been poked, his entire person sagged. His hands subconsciously gripped the corner of his clothes, and he lowered his head, his entire person emanating an aura of despair. After a while he replied in a low voice, I'm fine. "Alright, don't mess around, we're already in the same boat. Even if you don't want to implicate us, it's already too late." Lone Moon sighed. "Besides, do you think that if we let you go, Divine Imperial Sect really won't be able to find any clues at all?" Actually, they really couldn't find anything. With their cultivation, even the entire lower world combined would not be able to find any traces of them, much less with Xinying here. Yet Fatty's face was already ashen, his eyes filled with guilt. "Tell me, what's going on with you as a sect master?" Lone Moon asked directly. "Why can your blood help people resist the heavenly thunder?" Fatty's eyes darkened, and he lowered his head in silence for a while before he slowly opened his mouth. "Well, I don't know either." He wanted to smile out of habit, but it seemed like he was crying. Perhaps knowing that his disguise was almost gone, Fatty didn't hide anything and told him everything. He was already the sect master of Divine Imperial Sect from the time he could remember, and lived on the main peak since he was young. Although it was called the main peak, It was actually a lone peak above the sacred nether forest, far away from the sect. Because it was surrounded by dense forests with demon beasts, the only way to pass through was by sword kinesis, but he had a useless spirit root and was born unable to cultivate. So he had never taken a step out of the main peak. The immortal sect had always valued the aptitude of immortal cultivators, but they were very polite to him who couldn't cultivate. Although they didn't really need him to manage divine imperial sect, but whether it was food or clothing, everything was unique. Basically, he could have whatever he wanted. Even the traveling immortals or soul formation elders of the sect would come to the peak to see him from time to time, to discuss some matters big and small with him. Even the disciples who usually guarded the main peak were at least golden core cultivators. They looked very respectful, but of course it was just looking. When did you start to notice that something was wrong? Lone Moon asked directly. Fatty's eyes darkened, and he clenched his fists by his side before saying in a low voice, "Since I was 5 years old, every person who came to see me in the sect would take something away. At first it was just hair, nails and the like, but slowly it turned into blood, flesh, or..." His body trembled and he subconsciously hugged his left hand. The three people opposite him were silent, and Lone Moon's expression darkened directly. He had just treated Fatty's injury, and naturally knew what was different about his left hand. There were signs of broken limbs regrowing. Shit. He couldn't help but curse out loud, suddenly feeling that Chef's lightning strike just now was too light. That group of cultivators practically raised Fatty like a pig, and the kind that made use of him repeatedly. They seemed to be good to Fatty on the surface, but they only wanted him to stay in the sect willingly and be at their mercy. From time to time they would let out some blood, cut off some flesh and give him some spirit medicine to let him grow back. What a good plan. Chapter 460. Fatty glanced at them as if feeling that the atmosphere was too heavy. He hurriedly smiled as if to comfort them. Actually, I'm still very smart. I was already prepared to escape many years ago. Although I can't cultivate, I've already read all the cultivation techniques in Divine Imperial Sect. I know many things. Back then, I could escape from the main peak because I set up my own transportation array and my aura-concealing talisman. He seemed eager to prove something, pretending to be relaxed as he said, "Don't worry, even without you, those people might not be able to catch me." Ah. His forced laughter, under Lone Moon's glare, became weaker and weaker. His whole person was like a mouse that had seen a cat shrinking into a ball. Fellow Taoist Nyo was scary, scarier than those people who wanted to eat him. Until now he still thought that he had implicated them and wanted to persuade them to leave. How could there be such a beautiful white lotus in this world, and a fat one at that? Those cultivators, they need your flesh and blood. It must be the same as that blood array used for their own cultivation. Lone Moon took a deep breath, organized his own thoughts and then said, "In other words, your body may be different from others. Do you know why?" And this reason was definitely related to the nomological power. Fatty shook his head with a blank expression. "Then have you ever eaten anything strange or seen any special people? For example, like invaders?" He thought about it but still shook his head. "I grew up in Divine Imperial Sect." That was strange. How did he become Tripiaka's flesh? When he checked his body just now, he didn't find anything strange. "Chef, what do you think?" He turned to look at the person beside him. I Ching frowned. "There are indeed some special bloodlines in this world that can be used in medicine to achieve the effect of raising cultivation. For example, Radish, he was a vegetation spirit. After cultivating to human form, his flesh could also be used in medicine. But I've never heard of any bloodline that can resist heavenly thunder. Heavenly thunder was a test for cultivators by the heavenly Tao. No one could take the back door. Except for Shining. Even those with great merit can only relieve some of the pressure during their own tribulations. Rules were rules. The heavenly Tao was the fairest. Back then Yun Heng, who had saved the world, wanted to save that unlucky Song Ren. He could only use his own merit to exchange for it. I've never heard of anyone's flesh and blood being able to affect the judgment of the heavenly Tao. Fatty's flesh and blood was practically cheating. But that cultivator from Divine Imperial Sect who was going through the tribulation just now, the last few dozen bolts of heavenly lightning were really blocked. Moreover, they were not mistaken. The power of the lightning tribulation had indeed weakened in the end. When I Ching transformed back into his dragon form, he took special note of the blood array. It was really just an ordinary defensive array. It couldn't even block a few dozen bolts of lightning. Any soul formation cultivator could break it with a single blow. In other words, the heavenly lightning was indeed blocked because of Fatty's blood. It seemed that the abnormality of rule force was related to Fatty. However, no matter how one looked at him, he was just a mortal. Other than having a bit more meat, there was nothing special about him. He couldn't even cultivate. Wait a minute. Couldn't cultivate? Lone Moon hesitated for a moment. Suddenly he reached out and touched Fatty's brow. A trace of divine perception entered his sea of consciousness and scanned it. In the next moment he cursed out loud. Holy shit. What's wrong? Fatty felt a chill on his forehead. His face was blank. I Ching and Shining turned to look as well. Spirit concealing array. Lone Moon's face darkened. It's in his divine perception. Spirit concealing array. I Ching was shocked as well. What is it? Shining asked. Master, that's an array that completely isolates spirit chi. I Ching explained, the sea of consciousness is where cultivators regulate spirit chi. This array is in the sea of consciousness. In other words, he will never be able to absorb a trace of spirit chi, Lone Moon answered word by word. If he really was born with a useless spirit root, there was no way he could sense spirit chi. He had no affinity with spirit chi at all. Fatty couldn't cultivate, but he could draw half an aura concealing talisman and set up his own array. There was only one possibility, and that was that he had an extraordinary affinity with spiritual chi. He was able to draw Dharma talismans just by relying on the spiritual chi scattered in the air. As for why he looked like a useless spirit root, the only possibility was that his spirit root had been destroyed by someone from the beginning. In that case, it was obvious who had done all this. After hearing this, Fatty's face turned even paler. It was as if he finally understood the most terrifying truth. His whole body began to tremble. It was as if his divine soul had left his body. He looked at a spot in a daze. He thought that even if those people needed his flesh and blood, at least they had raised him for so many years. When he was young, they had always called him uncle. He didn't hate them. He took it as repayment. At least they would have a little bit of pity for him. But it turned out that they never had. Looking at Fatty, who was about to shrink into a ball, Lone Moon frowned. He could not help but pat him. Haven't you always wanted to cultivate? I'll help you break this array. Fatty stared blankly for a moment before raising his head. Can I? Fellow Taoist Nyo? It's fine if you don't call me fellow Taoist Nyo. Lone Moon reached out and touched his forehead. He directly used his divine perception to bind the array in his sea of consciousness. As he broke the array, he said, I'll make it clear to you first. The array in your sea of consciousness is easy to break, but your spirit root has been destroyed. If you want to cultivate, you have to use spirit chi to nourish your damaged spirit root. Your cultivation will increase very slowly. With the level of spirit chi in this world, you won't be able to recover without decades. Before he could finish his sentence, the surrounding spirit chi suddenly flourished. The originally quiet spirit chi in the air instantly surged over from all directions like crazy, flocking towards Fatty like a family that had been separated for a long time. The thick spirit chi hit the small house. It shook. In less than a few seconds, it collapsed with a few crashing sounds. But the surrounding spirit chi gathered even more violently. There was even a faint whirlwind. Lone Moon was stunned. He then realized that Fatty was absorbing the spirit chi. He was just about to remind him that he could not absorb spirit chi like this. If he absorbed it directly, his body would explode and he would die. He turned to look. He found that after the wild spirit chi surged into Fatty's body, it suddenly automatically divided into 5 parts. All the mixed and messy spirit chi automatically separated. As if it was sorted, it gathered into 5 different colors. Then it entered Fatty's body. And Fatty still maintained his previous posture. He sat on the bed with a confused expression. He did not do anything. But his cultivation began to increase rapidly. Middle stage chi refinement. Late stage chi refinement. Early stage foundation establishment. Late stage foundation establishment. Golden core. Nascent soul. It only stopped when it reached the late nascent soul stage. Furthermore, it didn't stop on its own. Instead, the Fatty stood up from the bed in a panic. The spiritual energy couldn't enter his body, so it stopped. Shining, Lone Moon, I Ching, there was no doubt that if he did not stop on his own, the spirit chi would directly send him to heaven. Chef. Lone Moon turned and patted the person beside him. I was wrong. You are not a little cheat. Yes. Chapter 461. What's wrong with me? Fatty looked confused. He felt like his whole body was full of energy, as if he had been reborn. He had never felt so comfortable before, yet he did not understand why he felt this way. He could only look at the three people in front of him blankly. Fatty? Lone Moon looked at him, speechless. Indeed, his damaged spirit root had completely recovered under the impact of the spirit chi, and it had even grown thicker. Not surprisingly, he had a perfect 5-elemental spirit root. Just like Yunheng, he had the potential to ascend to immortality even while lying down. You formed your nascent soul. Ha! Wuxia was even more confused. He stood rooted to the ground with his mouth wide open, his face full of disbelief. Formed my nascent soul? As someone who had been in an immortal sect for many years, he naturally knew what it meant. He had seen many people form their nascent souls with his own eyes. Which one of them was not in great danger, even with his flesh and blood? But he did not do anything just now. He only took a breath after the array was removed. Why did he suddenly form his nascent soul? Your condition. Lone Moon was just about to say a few words when the sky suddenly darkened. The spirit chi in the surroundings became chaotic once again. Faintly, it was filled with thick lightning spirit chi. His expression changed instantly. Shit, your lightning tribulation is coming. This was too fast. Lone Moon looked at the tribulation clouds gathering in the sky, picked up Fatty and flew out, stopping at an empty space at the side. As he conjured an array, he instructed, Fatty, you crossed 4 big realms at once. This lightning tribulation must be extraordinary. It is very likely that the core formation and nascent soul lightning tribulations will come at the same time. Just hang in there and try to stay awake. Okay. Before Fatty could react, Lone Moon had already pressed him onto the ground. In the next moment, the array around him lit up. He was wrapped tightly in 3 layers of clothes. Lone Moon then retreated in a flash. He looked worriedly at the completely dark sky. The tribulation clouds above his head were unimaginably dense. Even from afar he could feel the shocking lightning pressure. The power of heaven and earth emanating from the clouds was unusually thick. It did not look like an ordinary nascent soul lightning tribulation at all. It was even comparable to the heavenly tribulation of the immortal world. Immortal array? I Ching looked at the array around Fatty and immediately recognized that it was not an array that belonged to the lower realm. He turned to look at Father Nyo in confusion. Fatty has never cultivated before. Although he had somehow formed a nascent soul, in the end he was just an empty shell. At this moment he probably did not even know how to mobilize the spirit chi in his body. Any lightning could kill him, not to mention the lightning tribulation. He had no choice but to set up the immortal array. What's more, the lightning tribulation of a breakthrough is usually more dangerous than ordinary lightning tribulation. What's more, Fatty had skipped 4 levels in one go. He turned and glanced at Chef in annoyance. Aren't you the clearest about this? You little pervert who skipped levels from time to time. I Ching was stumped by him for a moment. The lightning tribulation of a breakthrough was indeed more dangerous. As someone who had been through it, he naturally knew this. Thus he did not speak. Instead, he turned to look at Fatty in the array with some worry. Fatty was really nervous. His face was full of panic. His eyes were still filled with confusion. He did not understand at all. 5 minutes ago, he was still a good-for-nothing who could not cultivate. In the blink of an eye, he was going through the lightning tribulation of a nascent soul. Fortunately, he still understood that he could only go through the lightning tribulation by himself. Thus, no matter how nervous he was, he still remembered Lone Moon's instructions. He sat where he was and shrunk into a ball, not moving a single step. In the next moment, the surroundings were completely dark. White flashes appeared in the clouds from time to time, as if something was brewing. Finally, with a loud rumble of thunder, a thick bolt of lightning broke through the clouds and smashed down, faintly bringing with it the power of heaven and earth. It's coming? Lone Moon's expression darkened. This lightning was even more shocking than he had expected. Even I Ching beside him was stunned. With a wave of his hand, the array around Fatty became even brighter. That bolt of lightning came closer and closer. Just as it was about to strike Fatty, suddenly, there was a sizzling sound in the air, like the sound of a fire being extinguished. That bolt of lightning that was as thick as a bucket flashed, as if it had been weakened by something. It became thinner and thinner. Finally, with a sizzling sound, it disappeared directly above Fatty's head. Not to mention striking someone, it did not even touch the array around Fatty. Just like that, it was extinguished midway. What was going on? The 2 people who had been waiting for the lightning tribulation were dumbfounded. What happened to the lightning tribulation that was supposed to be more powerful? The array was already set up and this was what you showed me. Not only that, the next 10 bolts of lightning tribulation were the same as the one before. When they appeared, each one was stronger than the one before. However, in the process of striking, each one was extinguished faster than the one before. It was like a joke. In fact, after less than 20 bolts of lightning tribulation, the entire lightning tribulation seemed to have lost its temper. It simply stopped striking. The thick lightning tribulation clouds dissipated, and the surroundings became bright again. Lone Moon, I Ching, was Fatty the illegitimate child of the heavenly Tao? Shining, who was calmly nibbling on a fruit at the side, suddenly narrowed her eyes and tilted her head. Yo! In the next moment, the sky was filled with rays of light. Spirit Chi once again gathered in Fatty's direction. The nascent soul that had just been formed on his body, which was originally a little vague, became more and more solid. Strange phenomena appeared in the sky once again. Only this time, it was different from the ones that flashed past Divine Imperial Sect. This time, in the sky there was the shadow of a dragon and then a phoenix. There was also a Qilin, a black tortoise, a white marsh and so on. It was as if it wanted to show the images of the divine race one by one. After a few minutes it still did not disappear. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He could not help but say to the heavenly Tao in the sky that seemed to be convulsing, "Hey, are you done yet? I didn't even see you so excited when I was promoted to young emperor. Do you know who you are working for?" The strange phenomena in the sky finally disappeared reluctantly. Before it left, it scattered even more rays of light towards Fatty, who had no idea what was happening. It even pushed his cultivation level directly to the late stage of nascent soul. Lone Moon cursed in his heart. He had to say it. I Ching, who was beside him, suddenly sensed something. He stepped forward and looked up at the sky. "What's wrong?" Lone Moon asked. Just now the realm gate loosened. Lone Moon was stunned. He subconsciously raised his head and sensed carefully. Indeed, the realm gate that was tightly locked earlier had suddenly loosened. Although it was not completely unlocked, the nomological power surrounding it had decreased by half as much as before. What was going on? He subconsciously looked at Fatty, who was still absorbing spirit chi in the middle. He carefully examined his body and indeed found a trace of nomological power that was about to disappear. It was exactly the same as the nomological power that surrounded the small world in the divine realm and complained to him. The realm gate loosened because of Fatty? Was it because of the increase in his cultivation level that the nomological power's restriction was reduced? Shining, what exactly? He was just about to ask a certain foodie when he realized that the person beside him had disappeared. She looked around and realized that she was already beside Fatty. She was nibbling on a fruit as she looked at the person who was still sitting obediently in the array, not daring to move at all. She waved her hand in greeting. "Yo, long time no see. Lady Shin." Fatty was still in a daze. He looked like he did not know that he had gotten a great bargain. He asked weakly, "Is the lightning tribulation over? Could he move now?" "You can come out now." Lone Moon also walked over and glared at him. He casually put away the array around them. "Pui, you cheating dogs." Fatty's face lit up and he stood up. Just as he was about to express his thanks, he sensed a familiar aura approaching. His face paled and he turned his head to look behind him. "I feel like someone's coming." Chapter 462. "Yes, they're here for you." Lone Moon replied nonchalantly as if he already knew. After some thought he added, "There's a total of 23 people, all soul formation and traveling immortals. It looks like they're all here this time." It was hard not to notice the strange phenomenon that happened in the past few minutes. Fatty's face turned even paler. A hint of panic flashed across his eyes. "What do we do? Let's hurry and leave this place." "Leave for what?" Lone Moon glanced at him. "You have to solve these problems sooner or later. It's good that they're here. It saves us the trouble of finding them again." Solve? Fatty hesitated. Seeing that Lone Moon did not look like he was joking, he became even more anxious. "Those people won't listen to reason." "Who said we're going to reason?" "Isn't that so?" Lone Moon laughed. He opened the fan in his hand and said word by word, "For this kind of thing we just have to beat them up." As someone at the top of the food chain, he showed that fists were the hard way. "Fatty, this is called solving? Isn't this looking for trouble? Didn't you say there were 23 people, all soul formation and traveling immortals?" "Yes, and then? There's only 4 of us." He was about to break down. He was getting more and more anxious. Although he already knew that fellow Taoist Nyo and fellow Taoist Chef were powerful cultivators, They could not tell that there was something wrong with his body. But after all, they were outnumbered. There are so many of them and they have immortal artifacts. You're right. For people is too much for them. Lone Moon closed his fan and suddenly turned around. He shouted, "Chef, I'll leave everything to you." With that, he took a step back and stood to the side. Chef was a professional when it came to fighting. He was definitely not here to take revenge for the master-disciple duo in the forest. Fatty hesitated. He did not think that there were too many people. He wanted to continue persuading. "I didn't mean." Before he could finish speaking, I Ching raised his hand, and a long sword appeared in his hand. A wave of sword chi that was thousands of times more terrifying than the lightning tribulation from before came crashing down, as if filling up the entire world. Fatty felt his legs turn to jelly. He almost knelt down. Even the approaching auras in the distance suddenly stopped, and some of them even fell from the sky. He subconsciously turned to look at I Ching, who was behind him. Previously he could not sense it because he did not have cultivation. Now he realized that I Ching's body was emitting a shocking aura, causing fear to rise from the bottom of his heart. He could not even think of resisting. I Ching took a few steps forward and looked in the direction of those people. It was just a few casual steps, but Fatty was still suppressed by the sword chi that I Ching emitted unconsciously. Was this their true strength? This was scarier than any soul formation or traveling immortal cultivator he had ever seen. For some reason he instantly understood what Lone Moon meant. For people was indeed overestimating those people. I Ching alone was enough. Moreover, he was the kind of person who was more than enough. That wasn't a joke. He really could do it. He suddenly felt a little shaken. His heart, which was full of panic and worry, calmed down for no reason. Was this a cultivator? It turned out that it was possible to be strong to this extent, strong enough to not fear any danger at all. He slowly clenched his fists by his side, and a desire that he had never felt before rose in his heart. If he could also, I Ching turned to look at Lone Moon and instructed, "Look after Master. Don't lose him again. Got it?" Lone Moon waved his hand out of habit. Only then did he tighten his grip on the sword in his hand. The sword chi around his body thickened. He was just about to fly up and finish the battle quickly. "Wait a minute." Fatty suddenly spoke as if he had thought of something. There was a seriousness on his meatball-like face. He cupped his fists and bowed to the two. "Can I ask the two of you not to attack?" "No way, Fatty." Lone Moon looked like he was looking at a Virgin Mary. "You want to let them go?" "No." He shook his head, clenched and unclenched his fists a few times and said word by word, "I want to settle the grudge between me and them myself." Lone Moon and I Ching exchanged a look and fell silent. "Thanks to the help of the three of you, I am now a cultivator. One day I will personally seek justice for them." He looked straight at the two of them and said even more seriously, "Please give me a chance. Can you not attack for now? Fellow Taoist chef." "No." I Ching, who had already put down his sword, pursed his lips. Instant rejection. "Who is your fellow Taoist chef?" What? Fatty's serious expression collapsed instantly. He looked at Lone Moon helplessly. "Help me persuade him, fellow Taoist Nyo. Collapse +1 chef, do it. Don't leave a single one for him." Lone Moon's expression darkened, and his attitude changed instantly. "Fellow Taoist Nyo. For all. No, fellow Taoists. Can't you give the newbie a chance to take revenge?" Seeing that Chef had already flown up on his sword, and even Lone Moon, who was planning to slack off, had summoned his flying sword, Fatty felt despair. Shining, who was nibbling on a fruit, suddenly said, "I'm hungry." "Kacha." The figure that was about to fly away suddenly stopped in midair. "Yes, master, no problem, master." The sword chi around I Ching extinguished. Without hesitation he flew back with a swoosh. He skillfully took out pots and pans and started a fire to cook. Lone Moon, Fatty. 5 minutes later, dozens of figures descended from the sky. All of them had high cultivation levels, and the least of them was a soul formation cultivator. They walked towards the unlucky thatched cottage not far away and checked inside and outside several times. They also released their divine perception to scan the surrounding radius of a few kilometers, but still found nothing. Strange, why did his aura suddenly stop? Could it be that we came too late? He got away. He's immortal with such serious injuries. Even if he's still alive, how could he hide from so many of us? The strange phenomenon in the sky just now might not have been caused by him. Impossible. It's definitely because of him. I clearly sensed his aura. And the Sex Array seal tablet has been destroyed. which proves that the spirit sealing array set in his sea of consciousness has been broken. Other than Huizhe, no one else can cause such a strange phenomenon. But only core formation will cause the lightning tribulation. Even if he can cultivate, it's impossible for him to form his core so quickly, right? What I'm afraid is that it'll be like the last time. There's an expert helping him and deliberately hiding him. No matter what, we have to find him first. Don't forget, the day of welcome is coming soon. If we still can't find him, who among us can get anything out of this? As if thinking of something, all the cultivators' expressions changed. After a while, the person who spoke first said hurriedly, "Search. Even if there's only a piece of flesh left, we have to find him even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground." So the group of people searched carefully in the same place again and again before leaving one by one, heading towards other places to search. The 4 people who had been sitting in the array tens of meters away and eating dinner, Fatty, who had gotten used to it very quickly, expressed that he was not affected at all. He even wanted another bowl of white rice. Chapter 463. It wasn't until all the cultivators who chased after him left that Fatty put down the bowl of rice that had been empty for the umpteenth time. Only now did he have a sense of reality of escaping from the control of divine imperial sect. He no longer had to worry about not being able to walk out of the blood array alive, and no longer had to worry about being eaten alive. Looking up at the 3 people in front of him, his eyes darkened. After a while, he seemed to have finally decided something. Suddenly he stood up, took a step to the side and bowed down. "Thank you, seniors, for saving my life." He kowtowed seriously and seemed to have used too much force, directly making a small pit in the ground. "I know that you may not care for my repayment, but I will always remember this kindness. My cultivation is low and I know that my body is special. With my strength alone, sooner or later I will become food for others. So..." He suddenly turned to look at Lone Moon. "Can Senior please teach me the real Tao of cultivation?" Lone Moon was stunned for a moment and glanced at Fatty. "From what you say, you want to rely on us?" Fatty gritted his teeth and kowtowed a few more times, his expression even more serious. "Although it's a bit difficult, I have no other choice. Senior, please help me." Lone Moon's eyes narrowed, and he put on the professional expression of an unscrupulous businessman. Smiling, he said, "You want us to teach you cultivation. Aren't you afraid that just after chasing away the wolf, a tiger will come in? You must know that we are cultivators too. Maybe we are also here for your body. You must know that your flesh and blood are very beneficial to cultivation." "No." Fatty shook his head hard, his eyes full of trust. Subconsciously, he turned to look at Shening, who was lying lazily on the table beside him. For some reason, from the first time he saw Miss Shen, he had a strange feeling that this person could be absolutely trusted. That feeling was very strange, but it was imprinted in his mind for no reason. "If you are here for my flesh and blood, that's even better." He suddenly smiled, not only not caring at all, but even said with some joy, "It's a fact that you have saved me. If Senior needs me to repay you with my body, then I will return this life of mine to Senior. How about that?" Only then did Lone Moon stop smiling. This was a good Fatty who could distinguish right from wrong. Saving him was not in vain. In fact, he didn't want to let this matter go. Who asked him to be related to the rule force? Before he figured it out, he naturally wouldn't let him be eaten by those people. Thinking of this, he could not help but speak with some sincerity. "All right, you don't have to worry. To tell you the truth, your body is indeed strange, but we also want to know why. But before that, I will protect you no matter what. As for cultivation..." He was somewhat hesitant. Fatty anxiously kowtowed a few more times. "Senior, please grant me my wish. I will definitely work hard to cultivate. Before that, I will fully cooperate with you to find out the cause of the abnormality in my body, whether it is to bleed or cut off my flesh." Lone Moon frowned. "I said I don't want your flesh and blood. Then you can have anything you want as long as I have it. From today onwards, my body belongs to Senior." "Who wants your body?" "Wait a minute. Why are you taking off your clothes?" He quickly pressed his hand down. "Senior." Yet Fatty still looked like he was seriously offering himself. He even picked up the fruit knife on the table. "Which piece do you want? I will cut it for you now." "Holy shit. Who asked you to cut it? Wait a minute. Why are you 2 wastrels looking at me like that?" "No." The master and disciple immediately looked up at the sky. "If not, why did you suddenly run so far away?" They were already 3 feet away. Both of them took another step back, their faces filled with, "I didn't expect you to be like this, Father Nyo. You won't even let Fatty off, so scary." No wonder he's always single, so this is his taste. That's enough, you two. I'm straight, alright? Also, can you guys lower your voice when you're whispering? I can hear you. Degree, senior. You shut up. In the end, Lone Moon still agreed to Fatty's request to learn sorcery. After all, the realm gates loosened the last time because his cultivation increased. In other words, the higher his cultivation, the faster the nomological power would return to normal. And now, Fatty only had a high cultivation but did not know any sorcery, not even the most basic sword kinesis. He looked like a nascent soul cultivator, but any golden core cultivator could probably kill him. So he definitely had to teach him, but who would teach him? That was the problem. Chef rejected him righteously. He had to be in charge of everyone's 3 meals a day, in addition to Xin Ying's afternoon tea, supper, snacks, fruits and pastries, and Fatty's white rice. He had no time at all. And Xin, forget it. Therefore, this glorious task naturally fell on Lone Moon's head. Lone Moon did not have much of an opinion at first. After all, with Fatty's affinity with spirit chi, it was not a matter of minutes to increase his cultivation, not to mention some commonly used sorcery and cultivation mantras. He felt that Fatty must be the disciple that he had the easiest time teaching. Until, for the 108th time, he fell from the sword without any warning. Lone Moon, Shining, I Ching, flips table. For all degree, full. Why was it that a person with cultivation cheats who had risen by 4 whole realms could not even learn sword kinesis? What a scam. Fatty crawled out of the pit for the nth time, his face covered in dirt. He looked weakly at Lone Moon, who was full of murderous intent. Master. Who's your master? I only said I would teach you, I never said I would take you in as a disciple. Lone Moon glared at him and took a deep breath before saying, Come, explain to me, how did you manage to fly halfway and then break the sword in half? Spirit swords were worthless. Fatty lowered his head and shrunk into a fat quail. I was wrong. Lone Moon looked at the spirit sword that had broken into 2 for the nth time, and felt his heart hurt. Forget it, Father Nyo. Shining could not help but comfort him. He's a newbie. Even newbies should not waste their swords like that. Was that broken sword? That was a broken spirit stone. It's not easy for him to look like this, please understand. Discriminating against body shapes was not right. As the saying goes, good-looking skin bags are all the same, interesting fatties, more than 100 kilograms. Cherish them. Lone Moon, Huizhe, was Miss Shin helping him? Why did he feel like he was stabbed again? It's already noon anyway, why don't we? You first? Wastrel, shut up. Oh, why don't we let him use this? I Ching stepped forward, took out a long sword that was surrounded by immortal chi, and handed it to Fatty. Immortal weapon? Lone Moon frowned. He can't even control spirit swords. Let him try. I Ching looked serious. Lone Moon was stunned for a moment, then nodded. The strange thing was, Fatty could actually control immortal swords. Although he fell from the sky from time to time, and flew like a plane, he did not break another immortal sword. Lone Moon observed carefully and realized that although Fatty was not familiar with the control of spirit chi, it was not a big problem. But the key problem was, his control of sword chi was terrible. Chapter 464. Lone Moon felt that the reason why Fatty could not even learn to fly a sword was because he had no foundation in swordsmanship. Every sword cultivator had to first practice basic swordsmanship for a few years and cultivate their own sword chi before they could combine it with spirit chi to use sword techniques. But Fatty had never cultivated before. He had only just begun to come into contact with spirit chi, not to mention sword chi. That was why he could not even control the slightest bit of sword chi in the Dharma artifact. It was a waste of his nascent soul cultivation. Originally, this situation was not a big problem. After all, there were so many cultivators in the world. There were many cultivators who had not cultivated sword chi. Actually, he just had to use spirit chi to suppress the sword chi in the sword. But he did not know what was wrong with Fatty. No matter how he moved his spirit chi, he could not suppress the sword chi. He seemed to have a grudge against sword chi. Once the spirit chi was transferred to the sword chi did not retreat. Instead, it seemed to have a chemical reaction and attacked each other. The longer it lasted, the more intense it became. The internal collapse caused the surface layer to be extremely fragile. In addition, Fatty was overweight, so it was natural that it broke. Fatty, did you have a grudge against sword chi in your previous life? Lone Moon looked back. He had already flown for 3 days, but he was still flying like a skyscraper. He estimated that even an immortal sword would not be able to hold on for long. He could not even subdue the sword chi in a flying sword. He suddenly wondered if he had been hallucinating when he rose 4 big realms in a row. I'm sorry. Fatty's face was full of guilt. He looked at Lone Moon with a face that was even fatter and bruised from the fall. I will work hard, master. Who's your master? Lone Moon glared at him. I don't have a disciple as stupid as you. Among the hundreds of disciples in Invincible Sect, there was no one as stupid as him. Maybe he is not suitable to cultivate the sword, I Ching could not help but say. He has a high affinity with spirit chi. He may be more suitable for spirit cultivation. He also has a 5-elemental spirit root. He can cultivate pills, talismans, arrays and weapons. Father Nyo, why don't you teach him something else? No. Before he could finish, Lone Moon rejected him. What? Nonsense. Lone Moon turned and glared at him. I only know how to teach sword cultivation. I can teach other things. You do it? Sorry I scratched you. I Ching turned and flew back to Xin Ying's side, pretending not to have said anything. Master, eat the fruit. Xining, Father Nyo, where are we going? Xining took the fruit from Chef and took a bite. They had been flying for 3 days. The southernmost region, Lone Moon replied. What land? Xining paused. Master, it's the place where Fatty wanted to go last time, where the demonic beasts run rampant, I Ching explained. Oh. Xining tilted her head. Why are we going there? It's all because of this Fatty you picked up. Lone Moon glared at her. His disdain for Fatty, this useless sword cultivator, had spread to the other two. He's like a piece of Tripiaka's meat now. Everyone wants a bite. He's just an embroidered pillow, yet he still wants to seek justice for himself. So, we can only find a quiet place and temporarily stuff him with some cotton. Besides. He frowned and looked at a certain person who was flying crookedly in front of him. Indeed, in less than 15 minutes, she fell head first again. His mouth twitched, and his expression became even more disdainful. Is it that troublesome? Xining paused. Did that mean that they were going to hide and wait for a while? This wasn't like Father Nyo's style. Shouldn't he be the type to pull Chef along and fight head-on, or go around to the back and secretly attack until the other party had nothing left? There was no such thing as hiding in the CEO's world, right? Master. I Ching immediately explained. Father Nyo means that what those people did to Fatty has already become an obsession in his heart. So he can only solve his own problems, otherwise it will affect his cultivation. If we help him, we may not be able to completely get rid of this obsession. It may even give rise to mental demons in the future. It will definitely affect his future ascension. Oh. Xining nodded. She didn't understand it all, but he probably meant that there were no psychologists in this plane? Father Nyo has already thought so far ahead. So he treats Fatty so well? Master is right. He indeed treats Fatty differently from other people. He's already destroyed tens of spirit swords, but he still lets Fatty live. He didn't even treat Boss Lon this well in the past. He even lets Fatty eat? In the past, Little Black and the rest had to bring their own rations a day in advance if they wanted to freeload. Not only that, Master, don't forget that he often deducts our food expenses. The last time we went to the Immortal City, I only stocked up 10 bags of snacks for Master. Fatty is indeed different. Father Nyo's taste is so heavy. We're going to become stepfathers soon. I didn't expect him to be this kind of Father Nyo. Swish. Lone Moon pulled out his 10-meter-long saber. I dare you two rascals to say another word? Can you not whisper in front of me? You've been acting the whole way, are you two done? Do you believe that I won't chop you to death in minutes? Master and disciple both flew backward. They couldn't afford to offend him, Master. Fatty said weakly. Lone Moon turned and glared at him. What? Do you want to die too? Fatty trembled in fear and almost fell down again. He pointed weakly in front of him and said, Southern land, we're here. He turned back and found that a white mist had appeared in front of him. The white mist poured down from the sky and directly merged into a river on the ground. The white mist was very strange. It did not spread in all directions, but only condensed on the other side of the river, as if dividing the world into two. On this side of the river was an ordinary wasteland, but on the other side of the river, it was a stretch of white, and one could faintly see the green mountains and clear waters in the mist. This is. Lone Moon directly summoned a stream of spirit chi and waved it towards the white mist, but it seemed to meet with some obstruction halfway and disappeared directly. Wave-like patterns on the white mist spread out from the middle. Indeed, this mist is an array. He glanced at the few of them and directly flew down. Looking down at the boundary river in front of him, he saw that the water was so clear that he could see the bottom, and the rich spirit chi of the 5 elements rushed towards him. This is a spirit river, I Ching said with some surprise. Yes. Lone Moon nodded. He also saw the problem with this river. What is a spirit river? Fatty was stunned and could not help but ask. It's a river formed by the gathering of spirit chi. Lone Moon glanced at him and said directly, this place has gathered a large amount of spirit chi of the 5 elements to form a river, so it's called a spirit river. It's similar to a spirit vein except that spirit veins are alive and can circulate endlessly and can even move. But the spirit river is dead, it can only stay in one place. He released his divine perception and directly scanned the entire southern land. It seems that this spirit river flows through the entire southern land, transporting the spirit chi of the 5 elements to various areas. Together with this white mist, it just happens to form a natural array, isolating the entire southern land inside. Array? Array? Fatty was stunned. Lone Moon glared at him. Didn't you always want to come to the southern land? Didn't you ask about it? I only heard that the southern land is dangerous and demon beasts run rampant, Fatty answered. From time to time, powerful demon beasts will run out, so even traveling immortals dare not enter the southern land. It's not that they dare not, it's that they can't. Lone Moon snorted coldly. No matter how powerful the demon beasts are, they are at most 12th level demon beasts at the peak of the soul formation stage. Traveling immortals are not afraid of them. But this natural array gathers the spirit chi of the 5 elements, and it traverses the entire southern land. It is one with this place. As long as one is a cultivator, once they cross the river, they will definitely disrupt the normal flow of spirit chi in the river. The spirit chi in the cultivator's body will cause the spirit chi in the river to backfire. Unless one's cultivation is high enough to resist the spirit chi in the entire spirit river, there is no way to enter. Fatty's face paled. That means no one can enter? No. Lone Moon answered. Mortals can enter. Without spirit chi in the body, naturally there would be no backfire. But he was no longer a mortal, right? Fatty's face fell. What do we do? Is there no other way to cross the river? There is one. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed and he smiled amiably. He beckoned to Fatty and said, come over and cooperate. Fatty was stunned. Come stand in front. He pointed to the empty space in front of him. Fatty looked confused, but he still walked over obediently. Master, I'm standing here. Before he could finish speaking, Lone Moon suddenly lifted his leg and kicked him in the butt. There was a splashing sound and Fatty fell directly into the river like a sandbag. In an instant, the entire river was blocked and the water level was cut off. Let's go, we can cross the river now. Lone Moon shouted. With that, he stepped on Fatty and walked over. Shining, I Ching, was Father Nyo venting his anger on Fatty because of their words just now? It was definitely true. Chapter 465. Fatty was a 5 elemental spirit body, which was exactly the same as the 5 types of spirit chi in the spirit river. In addition, he had an insane affinity with spirit chi. The spirit river would only think that he was part of the natural array formation and would not bite him at all. In other words, he was the best array formation stone. Therefore, Lone Moon's kick could be considered to be justified and fair. He was definitely not venting his anger on them. For all after they crossed the river and passed through the layer of white fog, they saw a dense forest in front of them. There were towering trees everywhere and they could not see the end of it. Other than the aura of the strange beasts, there was also a faint and cold aura in the forest. Demonic chi. Lone Moon hesitated for a moment and carefully confirmed that it was indeed demonic chi. Why would demons and beasts appear in the same forest at the same time? This was strange. So it turned out that demons and beasts lived together in this small world. Ordinary spirit beasts were strong but had no intelligence and could not be communicated with. Demons were completely different. Demons were cunning by nature. Only demons with intelligence could cultivate, and communication was even easier. This southern land was filled with demonic chi, which meant, Lone Moon's lips curled up. He suddenly had a good idea. Epsilon, Omega, roared just as they were thinking about it. A loud roar suddenly came from the forest, followed by a gust of wind. Half of the trees in the surroundings were suddenly broken, and with a loud rumble, a huge monster landed in front of them. Oh, what a coincidence. The beast was 3 to 4 meters tall. It had brown fur and a pair of wings on its back. Its body was surrounded by visible wind blades, and when it opened its mouth, a gust of wind would come out. It's a wind beast. Fatty, who finally climbed out of the river, widened his eyes. He looked at them anxiously and said, I saw it in the ancient books. This is a 9th-level wind-type demon beast, equivalent to the nascent soul stage. Shining replied, Can we eat it? Fatty was stunned. He thought that they did not realize the seriousness of the problem. He hurriedly explained, Miss Shen, although this beast is only 9th level, it's extremely fast. Even soul formation cultivators might not be able to catch up to it. It's very difficult to deal with. It seems like there are still some among you who have eyes. Just as the fatty finished speaking, a gloomy male voice suddenly rang out. Another figure appeared in the forest, walking towards them step by step. Upon closer inspection, it was a green-robed man with an extremely bewitching appearance. There was a strange red totem between his eyebrows, and his lower body had a large green snake tail. From time to time he would spit out a red snake tongue. Its cultivation was not high, only a rank 6 snake demon. You're actually able to recognize my wind beast. You do have some good eyesight. Unfortunately. He glanced coldly at them and smiled. You just had to come to the Southern Territory and court death. He raised his head and touched the giant beast beside him. His eyes instantly turned cold. Then you are destined to become food for me, the wind beast. As soon as he finished speaking, the wind beast seemed to have received some sort of command. It opened its mouth and roared at the crowd. For a moment, a strong gust of wind blew towards everyone again, bringing with it a white flash. Fatty was shocked. It's a wind blade. Get out of the way. Bakarulu? Before he could finish his sentence, the other 3 didn't move. Instead, he was blown back by the wind and fell into the river again. A large amount of spirit river water gushed in, and a series of gurgle sounds could be heard. The 3 of them. Were all fatties so full of drama? You can actually dodge the wind beast's wind blades. Seems like you guys have some skills. The snake man's expression darkened. He waved his hand at the wind beast and said, Eat them. The wind beast roared again. With a flap of its wings, it disappeared from the spot. At the same time, an invisible murderous aura rushed towards the 3 of them. Chef. Xinying's eyes lit up. Suddenly she said, Why don't we have barbecued meat for lunch? Yes, master, no problem, master. I Ching understood immediately. With a twist of his hand, a long sword appeared in his hand. It's useless. The snake man laughed coldly. It's too late to resist now. No one can keep up with the wind beast's speed. Rumble. Before he could finish speaking, there was a loud sound. Something huge fell from the sky and landed right in front of him. The huge beast that had been roaring earlier was now lying motionless on the ground. Its mouth was still open, but it was no longer breathing. The snake man. What just happened? He looked up subconsciously. The enemy in front of him was now standing on the mountain-like corpse of the wind beast. With a swing of the sword in his hand, he chopped off the beast's head. Dark red blood spurted out, splattering all over the snake man's body. As if sensing his gaze, the person on the carcass suddenly turned his head and looked at the snake man. The snake man's entire body trembled. His entire body froze. 2 words flashed through his mind. Is identical to, Master, do you want to eat snake meat? I Ching asked seriously. No. Shining shook her head. There are too many bones. All right, master. I Ching turned back and summoned a rain of swords. He began to cut up the snake man's meat, dismemberment, seriously. The snake man's eyes widened, almost as if they were going to pop out of his eye sockets. His breathing quickened as he watched the wind beast split into 4 pieces, 8 pieces, 10 pieces, dozens of pieces. Finally, boundless fear overwhelmed everything else. As if he could not take it anymore, he screamed and turned to run towards the forest. Demon? Lone Moon? Shining? I Ching? Who was the monster here? Could this snake have a little bit of race be in its heart? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. A few streaks of sword chi flew out and stabbed into the ground in front of the snake demon, blocking its way. He conjured a binding spell and tied the snake demon up tightly. With a wave of his hand, he pulled the snake demon back. Great immortal, don't eat me. The snake man trembled. Human cultivators were too scary. Who's going to eat you? Lone Moon glared at him. Don't you know how much meat you have? The snake demon was even more afraid now. He began to kowtow. Great immortal, spare me. Spare me. I have something to ask you. Yes, I will tell you everything I know. Let me ask you. Lone Moon stepped forward. Do you know where your demon monarch lives? The snake man hesitated. Demon monarch? I know. Wasn't it the demon monarch palace? All right, after lunch, lead us there and we won't kill you. That's it? With that, Lone Moon ignored him and turned towards Chef, who had already set up the meat and was scattering the seeds. The true phoenix fire roasted things really quickly. In the blink of an eye, the meat would be cooked. He had to get the first piece today. Wait, he seemed to have missed something. He looked around him. Where's Fatty? Oh. Shining pointed to the river and said, I think he was just washed away by the river. Lone Moon, I Ching, Fatty, gulp, gulp, gulp. What happened to protecting me? Chapter 466. The Demon King Palace. The Wolf King was one of the 7 demon kings of the southern land. He ruled a region in the north of the southern land. He had developed his intelligence early. In just 800 years he had cultivated from a small demon to the 12th demon king realm. He could be considered to be extraordinary. Therefore he occupied the area closest to the human race in the northern part of the southern land. Due to the Spirit River, cultivators could never cross the Spirit River to enter the southern land. In addition, demon beasts had their own demon chi that could expel the 5 elements of spirit chi from the Spirit River for a short period of time. Therefore the Spirit River was not a threat to demon beasts and they could still enter and exit freely. Therefore this was a natural shelter for them. Therefore the closer an area was to the Spirit River, the more demon beasts liked to stay. This was because they could go out and hunt for cultivators and mortals without any worries. Even if they were pursued by high-grade cultivators, as long as they hid in the Spirit River, they would be fine. But because of this, the entire area within a few hundred miles of the Spirit River was already deserted. Even high-level cultivators would not go near it easily. In order to eat more human flesh with abundant spirit chi and quickly increase their cultivation, the demon race would launch a beast tide every once in a while, leading the demons to hunt further away. They did not set the time to launch the beast tide because they were unprepared. Today was the day of the beast tide. The Wolf King's target this time was an immortal city 100 miles away. They had already found out that the immortal city had a lot of people and most of them were cultivators. If they could capture a few nascent soul cultivators, they would definitely help him rise to the 13th level. Originally he did not have the guts to attack an immortal city. But recently he received news that the 2 soul formation cultivators who were originally stationed in the immortal city suddenly left in a hurry. And they took away more than half of the nascent soul cultivators. Without the soul formation cultivators, attacking the city would be a piece of cake. This was a godsend opportunity. The Wolf King seemed to have already seen the day when he rose to the 13th level and became the only demon king in the southern land. The Wolf King had already gathered tens of thousands of demons and made an appointment with the 3 11th level beast kings nearby. After discussing the specific time, they would drive the beasts in the forest to rush out of the southern land and head for the place where the human cultivators gathered. But before he could discuss the specific time of attack, a small demon rushed into the palace in a panic and interrupted them. King, no, not good. The small demon ran in a hurry with a face full of fear. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. What are you screaming for? The Wolf King glared angrily at the little demon. Didn't you instruct me not to cause trouble when discussing matters with the beast kings? No, your majesty. Something happened. The little demon panicked even more. He curled up on the ground and trembled slightly. You better be in a hurry. Otherwise this king will eat you. The Wolf King directly released his might as a warning. The little demon trembled even more violently, as if he had thought of something horrifying. He pointed outside and said, There are a few cultivators who broke in. A cultivator has broken in. The wolf monarch was stunned for a moment and then laughed wildly. Ha, there's actually a fearless cultivator who dares to break into the southern region. You've come at the right time. His face was full of joy and he didn't take the little demon's words seriously at all. It won't be too late for me to attack the immortal city after I eat them as a sacrifice to the flag. As he spoke, he licked his fangs as if he had already tasted meat. He looked at the little demon and said, Tell me, where is that person now? Is he still near the Spirit River? No. The little demon's face turned pale. They are already outside the palace. Humph, looks like he has some skills. The wolf monarch snorted coldly. But he came at the wrong time. He just had to run into me gathering troops. There are tens of thousands of my demon army outside. I'm afraid he won't be able to escape even if he grew wings. My My Majesty, the demon army is already gone. The little demon was already trembling like a candle in the wind. What's gone? The wolf monarch was stunned, not understanding what the little demon meant. Tens of thousands of demon army? None, all gone. What? I just patrolled a quarter of an hour ago. How could they be gone? It's true. They were all killed by those cultivators. Nonsense. With a wave of his hand, the wolf monarch instantly sent the little demon flying with a wind blade. He stood up angrily, ignoring the few beast kings beside him, and directly walked out of the palace. I want to see what kind of human cultivator can scare you so badly that you actually think he can stop my demon army. With that said, he casually removed the soundproofing spell in the palace and directly strode out. He released all the demonic aura in his body without holding back and shouted, "Who dares to barge in?" Roar. Before he could finish speaking, a huge demon beast suddenly fell from the sky and directly smashed down. With a plop, the demon beast's entire body was crushed under it. Before it could react, a sword light followed closely behind. There was a swoosh, and like a nail, it directly pierced through the demon beast's body along with the demon king below, and then, there was no then. The three beast kings that came out with the demon king. With a swoosh, their faces instantly turned pale. They subconsciously looked up into the sky, only to see that in the sky full of sword light, two unfamiliar white figures were slowly descending, carrying with them a terrifying pressure that covered the sky and covered the earth. The three beast kings trembled at the same time and knelt down at the speed of lightning. "Great Immortal, please spare us. We were wrong." Three Lone Moon and I Ching were stunned for a moment before they landed, stepping on the demon beast's corpse in front of the palace. I Ching ignored the beast kings and casually pulled out the spirit sword that was stuck in the middle. Lone Moon smiled at the three of them. "You can transform. It seems that you are an 11th level demon beast?" "Great Immortal indeed, yes." The three of them trembled. "Then are you the demon kings who control this place?" No, we are not. We are not." The three of them immediately shook their heads like a rattled drum. "Then where is the demon king?" The three of them turned pale and looked at their feet in unison, their expressions extremely terrified. Only then did the two of them realize that something was wrong. They looked at each other and jumped down from the beast's corpse. I Ching grabbed the beast's tail and lifted it up. He was stunned for a moment. Why is there another one down there? He didn't see it just now. He saw a 2-meter-long wolf demon under the demon beast. It was no longer breathing and even its body was flat. It seemed that its meat could not be used for cooking. What a pity. This is the demon king? Lone Moon was stunned. The three beast kings nodded like chickens pecking at rice. It was too lousy. Why did it go offline before appearing? They had originally wanted to have a friendly talk between the two races to solve the problems of food, clothing, housing and transportation in the southern land. Who could they talk to now? What's next? I Ching asked as he put away his sword. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. What else could they do? The leader was dead. They had made a wasted trip. He looked down at the lifeless wolf demon on the ground. Although it was already dead, there was still a bloody grievance surrounding it. It did not dissipate for a long time. He did not know how many people it had eaten to have such a strong grievance. Compared to the clean rabbit from back then, this demon king was far worse. Chapter 467. Demons were different from human cultivators. Demon beasts retained their bestial nature, so there was no such thing as mental demons. But if they ate the flesh of people who died in vain, they would be stained with bloody grievances, and grievances could not enter the immortal realm. The lightning tribulation of ascension would wash away all the grievances on demon beasts, so no matter how high a demon beast's cultivation was, as long as it ate a human, it would most likely be struck to death by lightning. This was also the reason why there were so few demon immortals. When they first arrived, they had already discovered that there were tens of thousands of demons gathered here. They did not want to make a move after all. Chef was from the divine race. Once he released his divine aura, even the most powerful demon beasts had to kneel. Unfortunately, when they arrived, the demons were fighting over something. Upon closer inspection, they realized that it was a mortal child. He looked less than 10 years old and he was no longer breathing. In a fit of anger, he attacked and wiped out all the big demons that were stained with bloody grievances. Obviously, the natural geographical location of the southern land, while protecting these demon beasts, also led them down the wrong path. The good image that Rabbit created in front of them at the beginning of the demon race could not be applied to this small world at all. They were all demons, why were they so cowardly? But thinking about it carefully, Rabbit could become the myriad demon king and unify the demon world because of Shining. Before that, there were many demons who ate humans. Lone Moon turned to look at the three shivering beast kings. Perhaps because the beast race preferred natural treasures to eating humans, they did not have bloody grievances on them. Let's go back to Shining first. Lone Moon looked at the sky and replied to Chef. It's getting late, if we don't go back we'll get lost again. I Ching had no objections. He directly picked up the demon beast beside him and stuffed it into his storage bag. Then he flew back on his sword. Lone Moon looked outside the demon monarch palace, at the ground full of demon corpses, frowned and turned to look at the three on the ground. The three of you. Yes. Yes. The three immediately knelt even lower. It's too dirty here. Clean it up and come to the Spirit River in 4 hours. I have some instructions. Of course. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. You can also not come. The kind that never came. The three's hearts went cold. Instantly, they trembled again and nodded frantically. Yes, great immortal. We will definitely come, definitely. Lone Moon then turned and summoned his spirit sword. Just as he flew up, he thought of something and turned back to instruct. Oh right, bring a rabbit over. With that said, he flew away. The three of them. What does that mean? What do you want to bring a rabbit to eat? Should he be alive or dead? Great immortal, please explain yourself. When Lone Moon and I Ching returned, Shining was sitting on a rock, nibbling on a fruit obediently. Fatty was lying beside her, completely drenched. Perhaps because he drank too much water, he had yet to wake up. As Shining ate the fruit, she was still in the mood to give Fatty first aid. Every time she took a bite of the fruit, she would slap Fatty's stomach. Every time she took a bite, she would slap him again. Fatty spurted out water like a musical fountain. There was already a puddle of water on the ground. No one knew how long he had been vomiting. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He went over to stop Shining. If you continue, Fatty's going to vomit his bile. Only then did Shining retract her hand. Her eyes lit up. Are you guys done? Yes. Lone Moon frowned. The situation is a little unexpected. It's a little troublesome. At first, he thought that because of the Spirit River, the demon beasts of the southern land should be much purer than the demon realm that was managed by Rabbit. He did not expect the situation to be the exact opposite. The bloody resentment in the demon army previously was simply blinding. Shining nodded. Then can we start eating? Lone Moon, who originally wanted to discuss the future of the demon realm. So that's all you freaking wanted to ask? Master, dinner will be ready soon. I Ching, on the other hand, seemed to have long been used to it. The moment he landed, he immediately took out the pots and pans. He felt even more stifled, didn't he? Whose plane is this? Lone Moon took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his heart. Then he went forward and took out the table, chairs, bowls and chopsticks. After the three of them finished dinner, Fatty still did not wake up. Instead, 3 beast kings came over, trembling with fear. Behind them there was a large group of rabbits. There were domestic rabbits, fluffy rabbits, lion rabbits, lop-eared rabbits. There were all kinds of different breeds. There were white, black, gray, yellow, all kinds of colors. There were 2nd, 3rd and 4th stage rabbits of all kinds of cultivation. In a moment, the entire grassland was densely packed with rabbits. Did they plunder the rabbit's ancestral nest? Greetings, great immortals. The 3 beast kings all bowed to the few of them, their bodies still trembling uncontrollably. They shrunk their heads in fear as if they were also shrinking into rabbits. The beast king in the middle continued to speak. According to Great Immortal's instructions, we have brought the rabbits here. Lone Moon, I Ching, Shining, 2 reproachful gazes immediately swept towards Father Nyo. What are you looking at me for? Lone Moon glared back. He only asked them to bring 1 rabbit. He did not expect them to bring so many. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He scanned the rabbits all over the ground. Indeed, he did not see a trace of blood or grievance. Rabbits were still the best. It was just that their cultivation levels were extremely low. Most of them were little rabbits that had just gained intelligence at the 1st or 2nd stage. The higher ones were only at the 5th or 6th stage. And there were very few of them. 1 or 2 were as rare as phoenix feathers and Chelan horns. It seemed like this was not a group of rabbits with ambition. He looked a few times before confirming that the one with the highest cultivation level was the 7th stage white lop-eared rabbit in the middle. He pointed to that rabbit and said, "That 7th stage rabbit stays. The rest of the rabbits can disperse." Yes, great immortal. The beast king cupped his fists in response. Then he turned to the rabbits all over the ground and gave his instructions. Only then did the group of rabbits turn and scamper away into the forest. They disappeared very quickly, as if afraid that he would go back on his words. Instead, the rabbit that stayed was even more afraid. It held its head tightly and shivered, almost burrowing into the ground. The three of you are the beast kings of this forest, right? Lone Moon turned to look at the three. The three nodded in unison, replying, Great Immortal, yes, yes. Since you are the beast kings, why are you willing to listen to the demon king's orders? Although the wolf king just now was 12th stage, there were 3 beast kings. In addition, spirit beasts had a natural advantage in size, so they should not be afraid of the demons. However, judging from the attitude of the spirit beasts in the forest, their status seemed to be lower than the demons. It was the same with the wind beast from before. It was obviously a 9th stage beast, but it was willing to be ordered around by the 6th stage snake demon. What's more, it was in a situation where there was no contract. The 3 beast kings looked at each other as if wondering why he asked such a question. After a while, the beast king in the middle said, replying to Great Immortal, it's because the demons usually protect our clan's spirit herbs from being stolen by others. That's why we cooperate with them to deal with human cultivators. In other words, you are doing this for the spirit herbs? Yes. The 3 nodded in unison as if it was a matter of course. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Were they a bunch of idiots? Chapter 468. It was normal for spirit beasts to eat all kinds of spirit plants to improve their cultivation. Therefore, spirit beasts would usually appear around rare spirit plants. Frequent conflicts with human cultivators were common. But this was the southern land and no cultivators came here. In addition, the demon race did not have pill cultivators, so they were not interested in most spirit plants. Outside of the southern land, this situation could be said to be cooperation. However, the southern land had the spirit river, and cultivators could not enter at all. Why would they believe this kind of obvious trap at a glance? Hello. Wait a minute, it seems like only at the 11th level can the beast race transform and gain intelligence, and they can control tens of thousands of beasts. Before that, they have to rely on their instincts to cultivate. Compared to the demon race that gained intelligence at the 1st level, they were indeed not enough. It was simply a crushing defeat in terms of intelligence. Lone Moon sighed. He could not be bothered to expose the facade of peace between the demon and beast clans. Forget it, the previous demon king is already dead. I called you here only to tell you that it's time to choose a new demon king. The beast kings looked at each other for a while before cupping their fists. Please guide us, Great Immortal. I think. Lone Moon pointed to the side with his fan. This rabbit is not bad. Huh. The rabbit, who had been shaking like a leaf in the wind, stiffened. Only then did it raise its head, its red eyes blinking. Meh. That's right. Lone Moon stood up immediately. From today onwards, you are the new demon king. Perform well. Burp. The rabbit was so frightened that it burped. It couldn't control its spiritual chi for a moment, and with a puff, it transformed back into its original form. The palm-sized figure instantly transformed into a giant rabbit that was as tall as a human. A burp, I'll be a demon king? Burp. Rabbit thought that his ears were too long and he had misheard. When he was chased out of the rabbit's nest, he thought that he was dead meat. It was filled with despair when it found out that it was going to meet the Great Immortal who annihilated tens of thousands of the demon race's army. As a rabbit demon at the bottom of the demon world, it lived in fear every day, afraid that it would be swallowed by other races one day. Although it had already cultivated to the 7th level, which was considered a rare cultivation among rabbit demons, it was only an intermediate cultivation to other races. At most, he could run faster when he was running for his life. And what did it hear now? Great Immortal actually wanted it to be a demon? Demon king. The kind that could control tens of thousands of demons? Was it dreaming? But in the past he only dreamed of a few carrots at most. When did he dream of these things? What? You don't want to be a demon king? Lone Moon asked. They were all rabbits, so why did this one have no style at all? No. Burp. The rabbit shook its head. Yes, of course it wanted to. That was a demon king. It took a deep breath and suppressed the fear in its heart before answering, Great Immortal, I'm only at the 7th stage. I'm afraid I can't convince the masses. Don't worry about that. If I say you can do it, then you can do it. Cultivation was something that could be achieved through practice. But. Rabbit looked like he was about to cry. He sniffled and gritted his teeth. Thank you, Great Immortal, for your kindness, but Rabbit's aptitude is limited. I haven't broken through the 8th stage in hundreds of years, and I don't have much lifespan left. I'm afraid I'll fail, Great Immortal. Lone Moon paused and exchanged a look with Chef beside him. They didn't think of this. They only wanted to bring up a vegetarian to clean up the cannibalism in the demon realm and pull back the demons who went astray. That was why they chose the rabbit with the highest cultivation. How much lifespan do you have left? I Ching went forward and asked. Great Immortal, 50 years. Rabbit lowered its big head. That's enough. I Ching suddenly took out a large sack from his storage bag and brought it to the rabbit's side. He opened the sack and poured out a bunch of glass beads of various colors. They piled up on the ground and almost buried the rabbit. The light from the beads lit up the dark sky, making it a colorful scene. This was an inner core. With these it should be enough for you to break through, right? They were all saved up from hunting small animals in the past. Rabbit, Beast King, Lone Moon, a while later, alright, Great Immortal. No problem, Great Immortal. I'll definitely work hard to cultivate and become a qualified demon king. From now on, I'll be Great Immortal's rabbit in life and Great Immortal's dead rabbit in death. I Ching, Lone Moon, alright, he finally had some of that rabbit style in the past in terms of bootlicking. With the strong support of the 3 Beast Kings, Rabbit successfully became a demon king. He didn't know if rabbit demons were born with the racial talent of being sensible, but the first thing he did was to invite them back to the Demon King Palace. He originally wanted to place them in the biggest palace, but Chef rejected it. They first had a kitchen in the biggest back palace. Lone Moon didn't interfere with the rebuilding of the demon race. His only request was that they weren't allowed to eat humans anymore, and even more not to attack mortals. Cultivators were different. As a good vegetarian rabbit, Rabbit agreed without hesitation. With those demon cores, Rabbit's cultivation began to rise at a rapid pace. That day I Ching gave him a pile of demon cores, but he still didn't accept them directly. Perhaps he knew that he, a 7th-level rabbit demon, couldn't guard so many inner cores, so he would only come to the back palace every few days to ask for 1 or 2. He pretended to ask for advice on his cultivation while pretending to be familiar with them. It could be said that he was well-intentioned and very sensible. After being unconscious for a day and night, Fatty finally woke up, the kind that woke up because he was hungry. He thought that he could at least get a few bowls of white rice, but before it was served, the white rice in front of him was taken away by Father Nyo. Master. Fatty couldn't believe his eyes. From today onwards, you officially start fasting. Fasting? What? Why? Lone Moon's expression turned cold and he scanned him up and down. You tell me why. Touch the fat on your body and ask me again why. Fatty, say you're a nascent soul cultivator after all. Have you ever seen a cultivator as fat as you? That's right, the cult of animals. Your image is simply dragging down the standard of the cultivation world's attractiveness. You're not allowed to eat anymore, fasting for me. Lose weight. Lone Moon made the final decision, and officially announced that Fatty had entered food-saving mode. Fatty felt bitter. He looked weakly at the pair of master and disciple opposite him who were eating and watching the show. Clearly, none of them had fasted, it was their first time being human, why was there such a big difference? Suddenly, he felt even more hungry and let out a series of echoes of begging for food. Fatty, bear with it and it'll be over soon. Shining couldn't bear to comfort him. Why don't you eat a fruit first? With that said, she handed him a green fruit. Miss Shin? Fatty looked at her with a touched expression. I know too, Master is doing this for my own good. Cultivators should indeed abstain from food. I've long planned to do so. No, he just felt that 5 bowls of white rice for a meal was a little too much. It's just that. Fatty rubbed his belly, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. I don't know why, but after I woke up this time, I keep feeling a faint pain in my abdomen as if I'm under some kind of heavy pressure, so I'm especially hungry. Xin Ying's expression froze for a moment, and she patted his shoulder. You can do it. It has nothing to do with me. Don't worry, Miss Shen, I'll work hard. Fatty nodded heavily. After some thought, he took the fruit from her hand and bit into it. Instantly, his entire face was so sour that it looked like a chrysanthemum. So sour his teeth were about to fall out. Did Miss Shin eat this kind of fruit every day? Winky face. Chapter 469. Fasting was something that tested a person's perseverance, especially for a fatty. The key was to endure it. Not to mention the normal 3 meals a day, Chef would occasionally make pastries in the kitchen. especially Shining, who was a 24/7 eating machine. Occasionally there would be the sound of the rabbit chewing on the inner core. It could be said that the temptation of the rear palace was everywhere. However, Fatty managed to endure it. He said that he would abstain from eating and really didn't go to the table again. He gritted his teeth and ignored the temptation of all the delicious food. When he was really hungry, he would ask Father Nyo for a fasting pill. In a short 2 months, Fatty was already so hungry that his face was haggard, and his feet felt like they were floating. Then, he gained 1 kilogram. Lone Moon, I Ching, Shining, Father Nyo was a little crazy, so desperate, so there really was this kind of fatty in the world who grew fat by drinking water. No, by breathing. Father Nyo, it seems that Fatty's body is really different from ordinary people. I Ching glanced at a certain fatty who was meditating with green eyes and said, I checked his meridians and found that there are no residual impurities in his body. He is a spirit body like ordinary cultivators. No impurities? Lone Moon was stunned. That's impossible, he has been immortal for more than 20 years. Even if he ate spirit rice, it can't be completely free of impurities, right? He did not have an immortal body that could automatically refine the impurities in his body. Indeed not. I Ching nodded. Perhaps this is the 5-element spirit body? That means that he is as fat as a ball, and what is accumulated is not fat but spirit power. You can say that. Motherf***, these damn cheats. Since that's the case. Lone Moon walked forward and stopped beside Fatty, smiling warmly. Fatty, from tomorrow onwards, I will officially teach you how to cultivate. Fatty trembled involuntarily but still replied honestly, Thank you, master. Who's your master? Lone Moon glared at him. Call me by my name. Then, Master Nyo? Flips table. Degree, you are Master Nyo, your whole family are Master Nyo from the village entrance. Lone Moon summed up the failures of his previous teaching experiences. He thought about it carefully and realized that the disciples in the sect had gone down the wrong path not only because of Shining, the cheat, but also because of his teaching style. What's more, Chef was the only sword cultivator that he had successfully taught. Furthermore, he had come when he had amnesia and was being taught at the last minute. Moreover, he was a sword cultivator and was born with a sword embodiment. Even if he lost his memory, his body would still have a certain amount of it. However, as a brainless fan, he did not go astray in the end, which proved that there was no problem with his teaching method. Now that it was used on Fatty, it was safe to replicate the exact same set. Hence, Lone Moon set up an identical 10-layer sword array in the back hall. He stuffed a sword into Fatty's hand and kicked him in. Let him start slowly from the first level. They were both little cheats, but he didn't think that Fatty could be like Chef, who could create his own sword technique and understand sword intent. However, it was not a problem for him to learn some basic sword moves. However, a few days later, Lone Moon really realized that Fatty's aptitude for swordsmanship was so bad that it made his hair stand on end. No, he was simply poisonous. Lone Moon thought that no matter how bad he was, with his nascent soul cultivation, it would not be a problem for him to get through at least 5 layers of the sword array. Hence, he specially set up an exit at the 5 layers of the sword array and threw him in without worry. However, 3 weeks passed and there was no movement at all. Lone Moon thought that he had gotten to the upper layer of the sword array and was a little happy. However, Chef casually mentioned that he sensed that Fatty's aura in the sword array was getting weaker and weaker. It was estimated that he would disappear in a few days. Only then did he enter the sword array to look for him. He searched the entire 10 layers of the sword array and found Fatty, who had been unconscious for a few days, at the lowest layer. His body was also covered with small wounds caused by weak sword chi. That's right, he had collapsed at the first layer. Lone Moon had the urge to destroy his corpse at that time. How bad was his swordsmanship to fall at the first layer? Even chi refinement disciples with a little bit of cultivation could get through the sword array. As a nascent soul cultivator, what kind of tricks did he use to be beaten down here? Lone Moon felt his liver hurt. He had seen many smart disciples, but this was the first time he had seen such a stupid one. Damn it, he really wanted to throw the burden and leave. He had no choice but to increase the intensity of his training. Apart from entering the sword array, he also personally fed moves to Fatty. Swordsmanship and whatnot, one would naturally learn it after fighting more. Are you a pig? Do you know how to hide? How many times have I taught you this move? I'm sorry, master. Do you want to die or do you want to be a delivery for the other party? I told you to block here, do you know how to block? Yes, master. Crawl back here for me. What's the use of growing so much meat? Continue training. Yes, master, no problem, master. You fell at the first layer of the sword array again. Run 50 rounds around the demon palace. You are not allowed to use spiritual energy. Yes, master. Thus, the entire rear hall reverberated with Father Nyo's murderous roars every day. Even Rabbit, who came to collect his daily demon cores, was so scared that he revealed his original form. Then, he got used to it after being scared for a while. Straight face, Rabbit went from shivering in the beginning to gnawing on the demon cores and watching carefully at the side. Perhaps Fatty's tragic state more or less served as a warning to others. Rabbit also cultivated more and more desperately. In just a few months he was already an 8-stage rabbit demon. As rabbit demons, cultivators, who also lived under great immortal Loneman's tyranny, Rabbit's heart softened. From time to time he would smuggle some carrots and the like for Fatty under the cover of night. In the course of time, a revolutionary friendship developed between the two wretched fellows. Occasionally, Fatty could be seen hugging Rabbit's head and crying loudly. "Brother Rabbit, I didn't expect cultivation to be so miserable. I'm so pitiful. Brother Fatty, hang in there. We can definitely become useful. Do you want to eat a carrot to calm down? Brother Rabbit, you really are my bosom friend. Can I have one more? Brother Fatty, I'll give you 3. You're indeed my best brother, Brother Rabbit, Brother Fatty." Lone Moon, who happened to pass by. "Haha, the two of you are quite close. Then let's enter the sword array together to cultivate from tomorrow onwards." Fatty, Rabbit, Sigma Q, Pa Bolt from the blue. A tragedy in the cultivation world. Are you a demon? Master, why wasn't Father Nyo so strict when I rewound? The crowd watching chef asked. Maybe you skipped a grade too quickly back then, and he didn't have time to prepare for the lessons. The crowd chewing on fruits replied. Speaking of which, why didn't Father Nyo teach Fatty something else? She glanced at Fatty, who was crying out loud and was too miserable. She could not help but ask. Other than sword cultivators and body cultivators, aren't there also pill cultivators like Floaty and all-rounders like Boslan? Father Nyo didn't look like he didn't know anything either. Master. I Ching glanced at Fatty before explaining, it's not that Father Nyo doesn't want to teach, but in Fatty's current situation, it's most important to prioritize sword cultivation. What? Chapter 470. Fatty's physique is special and he has the 5 elemental spirit body. Indeed, pills, talismans, arrays and weapons are easier for him than sword techniques. But because of this, sword techniques have become his only weakness. I Ching said in a low voice, Father Nyo can see this, so can Fatty's enemies. And he can't do anything about sword techniques now. He can't even fly a sword. This may have something to do with his physique. Even if he learns other spells, not to mention sword cultivators, even if he meets cultivators who are good at sword techniques, I'm afraid. Defeated instantly? Chining finished. Yes. I Ching nodded and added a few more plates of pastries on the table. Then he continued, so, Father Nyo's purpose in urging Fatty to learn sword techniques is not to improve Fatty's cultivation, but to let him quickly familiarize himself with sword techniques so that he can understand how to deal with sword cultivators in the future. Oh, I see. What's more, the earlier he starts training his sword techniques, the better. Even if he can't understand sword intent immediately, it's good to let his body form natural reactions. If he learns something else first and gets used to other attacks, it will be very difficult to change back. This was also why sword cultivators were always stronger than other cultivators. Oh. Shining nodded. Simply put, sword cultivators are close combat sorcerers while other cultivators are long-range sorcerers. Yes, I understand. No, now I'm the one who doesn't understand, Master. But are you sure it's not because Fatty uses up too much flying sword that Father Nyo let him learn this on purpose? That seemed to make sense. Sigh, Father Nyo treats Fatty differently indeed. Chef, what if we become orphans? Sob, sob, sob. I Ching, heir, what to do? Father Nyo wasn't here, did he have to continue acting with Master? It was so hard to be a boyfriend. Under Father Nyo's violent suppression, Fatty finally passed the first level of the sword array and successfully entered the second level. Loneman's expression, which was getting colder by the day, finally softened a little. Then without hesitation he doubled Fatty's daily training. Of course there was also Rabbit. Fatty's heart was barren, not a single blade of grass grew. He suddenly felt that the days when he first started abstaining from food were the days when he was in paradise, but it was gone in an instant. Fatty's face was full of despair. Before he could plunge into a new round of hell, something big happened in the Demon Monarch Palace. Demon King of Shilin? Lone Moon glanced at the bitterly laughing rabbit on the ground. What Shilin demon? Aren't you the Demon King? Could it be that someone dared to usurp the throne? No. Rabbit shook his head forcefully. I'm only the northernmost demon monarch of the northern woods. I manage the area that is tens of thousands of miles away from the Spirit River. The southern lands are vast and I'm not the only one in charge. In other words, you haven't unified the territories here. Lone Moon frowned. You can say that. Rabbit's ears shrank back weakly. How many demon kings are there in the entire southern region? Back then he only cared about finding a quiet place to stay, so he didn't know much about these things. Rabbit was also a sensible person, so he wouldn't bother him with the matters of the demonic beasts. On top of that, Fatty was an insulator to swordsmanship, so he had no time to care about anything else. There are a total of 7 demon monarchs. Rabbit answered honestly. The Tiger King and Bear King of the Southern Woods, the Leopard King and Lion King of the Western Woods, the Mermaid Clan of the East Sea, and the Feather Clan of the Northern Woods, plus the former Wolf King. This time, the demon monarchs of the Western Woods are the Leopard King and the Lion King. They want to snatch your territory? Yes. You wanted to cry. Then let's fight. Lone Moon replied. They were all demon monarchs and it wasn't a one-on-one fight, so the strength of each side should not be weak. At most, the leader would be left to Chef. No way, Great Immortal. What? Great Immortal, have you forgotten? Rabbit lowered his head aggrievedly, and his voice became weaker. Originally, the Northern Woods was the strongest among the 7 races, but a few months ago, Great Immortal killed all the high-level demons in the Northern Woods. Now there aren't many high-level demons in the Northern Woods. So if they really had to fight, the Northern Woods was the weakest. The Western Woods also found out about this, so he directly came over. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He almost forgot about this. It seemed that the powerful demons here were all in Chef's pot. So he let Rabbit be a commander without an army at that time. Cough that. He coughed. What's the situation over there now? The Leopard King and the Lion King have already led the demons under them to the border of the Northern Woods. I reckon that in less than a day they can attack the Demon King Palace. Let's go, I'll go take a look. Lone Moon stood up. Just as he was about to say that he would accompany Rabbit to take a look, he glanced at Fatty who was practicing swordsmanship at the side and twisted his leg. His expression darkened instantly. Anger rose in him at once and he immediately changed his mind. Fatty, you follow too. Ha! Fatty was stunned. Follow where? What ha? After practicing for so long, we have to try it out in actual combat. With that said, he turned and glared at the 2 idle people at the table. And you 2 prodigals come along too. Prodigaling, prodigal Ziqing, meow meow meow? Was Father Nyo's teacher's anger now starting to attack indiscriminately? The group of 5 then flew towards the border of the Northern Woods. From afar they could see a black mass. At a rough glance there were at least thousands of demons gathered. All of them looked murderous and their cultivation levels were not low. There were even several 10th level demon beasts in front of them. The leaders were indeed 2 12th level demons. One was a leopard demon and the other was a lion demon. They were about to work together to break the Northern Woods array formation. On the other hand, on the Northern Woods side, there was not a single demon to fight. Occasionally, a few appeared, but they were busy running for their lives. It looked especially desolate. No wonder Rabbit said that they could not beat them. In such a situation, not to mention gathering a demon army, it was difficult to find a few demons that could fight. Seeing that the Northern Woods array formation was about to break, Lone Moon directly flew down with a string of burdens and landed in front of the 2 demon kings. The demon array formation of course did not have much technical content. It was good enough that it could last for 5 minutes. Seeing the sudden appearance of these few people, the 2 demon kings stopped for a moment. Sweeping a glance at them, his gaze fixed on the only demon at the side, Rabbit. Instantly he laughed maniacally. Ah! You are the rabbit demon that ascended to the position of Demon King? A mere 8th level rabbit dares to call yourself a Demon King. Rabbit subconsciously wanted to retreat but he resisted. Lion King, Leopard King, why did you barge into my Northern Woods for no reason? Why? Leopard King laughed. Have you become stupid from eating too much grass, Rabbit? That Wolf King used to occupy such a good position in the Northern Woods because he had many wolf cubs under him. Now that he's dead, of course this place belongs to me. You are just a little rabbit demon. How dare you take the opportunity to call yourself a king? If you know what's good for you, hurry and get out of the demon palace. Otherwise, he suddenly revealed a mouth of sharp teeth sinisterly. We will eat you. He was clearly eating carrots. Chapter 471. After the Panther King finished speaking, he roared deliberately and used his claws to break the North Forest Array formation. Suddenly, a gust of wind with wind blades came towards them. The rabbit's whole body stiffened. Under the huge pressure, it could not move at all. Lone Moon grabbed the rabbit and just managed to avoid those wind blades. Such bad breath. Xin Ying subconsciously covered her nose. Did all small animals like to breathe at people? They were not paper planes. Having missed the rabbit, the Panther King's face darkened. Only then did he look at the few people beside him. Following that, his eyes lit up and were filled with desire. Human cultivators? He had long heard that a few human cultivators from the southern land had killed the Wolf King and destroyed tens of thousands of demon soldiers. But he did not believe it completely. Killing the Wolf King might be true, but how could it be possible to kill tens of thousands of demon soldiers? It was definitely because the rabbit demon released fake news to protect itself and wanted the other demon kings to retreat. Other demons might not be clear about the level of human cultivators outside the southern land, but as a demon king he knew. Those who could enter the southern land were probably not of low cultivation. They were likely to be soul formation or traveling immortal cultivators. If it was a one-on-one fight he might have some reservations. But now that there were so many high-level demons here, the other party could only become food in his mouth. The more the Panther King thought about it, the more pleased he became. The way he looked at Lone Moon and I Ching was as if he was looking at a big meal. After eating these two people he would definitely be able to rise to the 13th level. At this thought he instantly lost the mood to talk and ignored the rabbit demon. While the Lion King was not paying attention, he directly pounced towards Lone Moon. This human cultivator is mine. Seeing that his sharp claws were about to pierce through Lone Moon's chest, suddenly a white light flashed in front of him. The Panther King only felt a chill in his hand. The hand that he had just stretched out suddenly fell to the ground with a thud. In an instant it turned back into a meat claw and even rolled twice. The Panther King was stunned for a moment, completely unable to react until a huge wave of pain hit him. Only then did he cry out. He directly rolled on the ground and turned back into a huge leopard, letting out a roar. All the demons? What just happened? Why did the king fall before they could see clearly? After a while the Lion King, who was the closest, was the first to react. Instantly he released a sky full of demonic chi, waved at the demons and said, "Kill those two human cultivators." Only then did all the demons rush forward. Lone Moon frowned, his heart full of annoyance. Originally it was already troublesome enough to have a stupid disciple, but these little animals still came to find trouble. His expression darkened instantly. He turned and shouted angrily, "Chef!" In the next moment, I Ching's body flashed and he flew out. With a wave of the sword in his hand, a huge wave of sword chi slashed towards the ground. There was a loud rumble. The entire ground cracked as if there was an earthquake. In an instant, a 4 to 5 meter wide crack appeared. It was as if the entire forest had been split apart. All the demons who were roaring and pouncing over suddenly froze and were instantly dumbfounded. There was a strange silence. For a moment, the entire forest was filled with only the Panther King's cries of pain and the sound of the monsters falling into the cracks. That sword just now, if it had struck them. The demons did not dare to think about it. Bean-sized beads of sweat flowed down from their foreheads. Die, 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 run. It was unknown which demon shouted, but it directly woke up the group of demons who were frozen, and they immediately ran away. Because the high-level demon beasts were all standing in front, the 5th and 6th level demons behind them naturally could not run as fast as the high-level demons. So there was a big stampede. The demons in front all fell, and in a moment there were several layers of demons. "Chef, stop them. I still have a use for them." Lone Moon instructed again. I Ching nodded and flew up obediently. Master said that Father Nyo was going through menopause recently. For the sake of food expenses he had to give in to him. He raised his hand and conjured a seal, summoning a sky full of spirit swords. They fell down like rain and set up a sword array. In an instant, thousands of demons were surrounded inside. There was no way out. The demons were stunned. Lone Moon turned to look at Fatty and revealed a teacher-in-charge smile. "Fatty, you can start your daily training." "Huh?" Fatty, who had been watching happily, was suddenly called out, and his whole body trembled. What training? Let's start with this old and weak one. Lone Moon did not care about him and directly walked up to the Leopard King who was rolling on the ground in pain. He raised his hand and conjured a seal, stopping the blood from its broken claw. Leopard Demon, if you can win, I will let you go. With that said, he threw the sword in his hand to Fatty behind him. Win who? Fatty, who caught the sword reflexively, was dumbfounded. Looking up, he saw a three-legged giant leopard roaring, baring its fangs, leaping towards him without using its claws. This master. It was for real. He was wrong. Inedia was an immortal realm, and the sword array was not hell. This was, Shining, Rabbit, he felt that he should pretend that he did not exist now. 8 months and 4 days after entering the southern land, Fatty, who had finally passed a level of the sword array, began his actual combat career. So far, the number of sparring partners, 8,000. Progress was very slow. Perhaps actual combat could really train one's sense of crisis. Fatty, whose sword skills were terrible, was slowly turning the corner. Although he was still despised by Lone Moon, at least he could use his sword skills to avoid the killing moves coming towards him. To reach this level he had spent nearly 5 years of time. And the demons of the celestial forest had also been sparring partners for a full 5 years at the edge of the forest. At first they still wanted to escape, especially the Lion King who had the highest cultivation, but after being poked a few holes by Chef's sword array, they became well behaved. They even built houses and nests on the spot. The entire sword array seemed to be developing into a small demon town. At the beginning, Lone Moon would pull a few small demons from the array every few days to sparring with Fatty. Fatty always lost at the beginning, but slowly, the more he was beaten, the tougher he became. So the level of the demons sparring with him became higher and higher. Towards the end, the small demons of the 5th and 6th level were no longer useful. Seeing that they had been well behaved all these years, Lone Moon waved his hand and let the small demons out of the sword array. But the strange thing was, those small demons that left the array were cheering at the beginning, but after a few months they ran back eagerly, saying that they were used to living in the sword array and could not bear to leave. Some demons even said righteously that their wives and children were all inside. If they went out alone, it would be too undemonic. So they begged Chef to open the sword array and move back. Such situations became more and more frequent. Lone Moon simply asked Chef to remove the sword array and let those demons go. But in the end, not many demons escaped, and even lined up for Lone Moon's roll call every morning. Those who got called would beat Fatty, those who didn't would disperse and do what they were supposed to do. As if they had long gotten used to such a mode of survival. Even the way the demons greeted each other was the same from the beginning. Did you cultivate today? Did it turn into you beating Fatty today? Lone Moon? He felt that the group of demons that came aggressively to snatch territory was just an illusion, that this group of demons was just a group of people. Chapter 472. The 360-degree change in the minds of these demons actually had something to do with the new demon king, Rabbit. And the cause was due to his cowardice. After the Shilin demons were trapped, Rabbit was quite happy at first, but slowly realized the subsequent problems. Although Great Immortal was supporting the demons now, he didn't need to be afraid that those Great Immortal would come out of the array one day and settle scores with him. But in the future, what if Great Immortal left in the future and they put all the blame on him? Even if his cultivation rose by then, he wouldn't be able to defeat a Rabbit. Those were all high-level demons, not to mention the dozens of 10th level. The key was that there were 11th and 12th level demon kings. As a Rabbit at the bottom of the demon realm, he couldn't sleep all night, he couldn't even concentrate on his cultivation. In addition, Fatty, his revolutionary comrade, was brought to battle. Rabbit trembled in fear for a month, and after a whole month of nightmares he finally couldn't help but move a small stool to the border of the Shilin forest. As he sat beside the sword array he started to brainwash those demons. No, it was advice. Let me tell you, you can't even imagine Great Immortal's cultivation, just give up. Wolf King is a good example. Let me tell you, Great Immortal was kind to you this time. Do you know what happened to the last batch of demons who offended him? Gone. Not just killed, not even their corpses were left. All of them were on the table. Let me tell you, Great Immortal hates demons eating humans the most. That's why I became a demon king. If you become vegetarians now, he might spare your lives. Let me tell you, we demons shouldn't be so irritable. Eat a carrot to calm down. Think about it, as long as we're alive, everything else is just a carrot. Let me tell you, you've been locked up for so long, I know you're hungry. As demons I feel sorry for you too. I can't do anything else, but carrots are enough. If you want to eat grass, I can pull some for you too. Let me tell you, there are many benefits to following Great Immortal. Do you see these demon cores? Great Immortal rewarded me 1 a day, yes. You heard right, 1 a day as long as you're obedient. Let me tell you, don't think that I'm almost 10th level now, but 2 years ago I was just a 7th level rabbit. It's all thanks to Great Immortal that I managed to ascend so quickly. Let me tell you, Great Immortal said that when demons eat human flesh, they will be stained with blood and resentment. Even if they can raise their cultivation in the short term, they will be struck to death by heavenly lightning when they ascend. Think about it, it's been tens of thousands of years since the last demon ascended. This is all because of cannibalism. Let me tell you, at first none of the demons paid any attention to it. But as time went on, there were bound to be a few foolish demons who believed it. Coupled with Lone Moon's cooperation, even more demons believed it. And because Rabbit would send them carrots, vegetables, and grass from time to time, more and more demons were sold and began to accept the Rabbit as a demon king. Even the 12th level Leopard King and Lion King became polite to the Rabbit. This recognition did not disappear even after the sword formation was lifted. Rabbit, a demon king who had not even reached the 10th level, had strangely obtained the recognition of all the demon clan and became a demon king in name and in reality. Furthermore, he had become a demon king by relying on his mouth. 5 years later, Fatty, who was used to being beaten up, could already withstand the attacks of an 11th level demon king. His swordsmanship had also improved by leaps and bounds. Although at most he could only be considered a body, pui, a combination of a 5-element cultivator and a sword cultivator, but at least he was more durable. Definitely not a body cultivator. Only then did Lone Moon cancel the daily demon activity of beating Fatty up. He carried Fatty back to the demon palace and threw him into the sword formation again. He stood guard outside and allowed Fatty to be beaten up in the array. But suddenly, without the chattering demons around and the brainwashing words of Rabbit, Lone Moon felt that something was missing. So, he locked Rabbit in as well. Rabbit? What the F***ck? Perhaps with the foundation of being beaten up, Fatty quickly passed through the 2nd level of the sword formation and successfully entered the 3rd level. Then, he was stuck again. This time, Lone Moon did not use his cold eyes to baptize Fatty. Instead, he changed from sparring with demons to sparring with himself. He personally beat, fed moves. Fatty's face, which was as fat as a pig's head, never recovered. With a pig's face, and after practicing swordsmanship for more than 10 years, Fatty used practical actions to prove that the constitution of being immune to swordsmanship really existed. Even Rabbit successfully rose to the 11th level and passed through the 8th level of the sword formation. He was still stuck at the 5th level. So when Fatty finally passed through the 5th level, Lone Moon did not continue to force him to enter the 6th level. Instead, he directly removed the 10th level of the sword formation. Then he officially began to teach him alchemy, talisman arrays, weapons, and the art of taming beasts. Although the 5th level of the sword formation was nothing to a sword cultivator, to Fatty, it should be able to withstand the beating of a sword cultivator. That day, Lone Moon engraved some 5-element spells, as well as the cultivation techniques of array cultivators and talisman cultivators into jade slips and gave them to Fatty. As for alchemy, which was costly, time-consuming, and could not be used in battle immediately, he could learn it last. As for the art of taming beasts, all the demon beasts in the southern land knew that he was a good friend of Rabbit Demon King. There seemed to be no need to learn it. Next was refining weapons, which Chef was more familiar with. He originally wanted Chef to engrave an inheritance about refining weapons, but he did not find anyone in the kitchen. Only then did he remember that he had not seen those 2 little rascals for a long time. He subconsciously released his divine perception and scanned the entire Demon King palace, but did not find any familiar aura. Where were they? He looked around the back hall but still did not see anyone. He could only take Rabbit out. Great Immortal Shin? Rabbit was stunned for a moment, then realized that he was asking about the other 2 Great Immortals. Aren't they eating in the back hall? I just looked, there's no one. Lone Moon's face darkened. To be precise, there was no one in the entire Demon King palace. Did they sneak out to cause trouble again? This I don't know. Rabbit shook his head. But 4 hours ago, I saw the 2 Great Immortals drinking tea in the pavilion beside the front hall. Maybe they... Before he finished speaking, Lone Moon had already turned and walked toward the front hall. Indeed, from afar he saw 2 familiar figures sitting in the pavilion. One was nibbling on pastries and the other was pouring tea. But they did not speak and their expressions were a little stiff, looking a little unnatural. Lone Moon stopped in his tracks, his face instantly as black as the bottom of a pot. Aren't the two great immortals here? Rabbit, who followed a step later, opened his mouth subconsciously. I said, Great Immortal, you don't have to. Before he finished speaking, Lone Moon directly waved his hand, and a wave of spirit chi swept over. In an instant, the two people in the pavilion flashed with white light, and directly turned into two pieces of white paper in the shape of a human, swaying and floating down. The teapot that was still in Chef's hand fell onto the table with a plop, and water splashed everywhere. In the next moment, an angry roar immediately sounded throughout the entire Demon King Palace. I want to break the legs of those two wastrels. Rabbit, is it too late to slip away now? Chapter 473. Lone Moon flew out of the southern land angrily. If killing intent could hurt people, there would be no one within a few hundred miles of the southern land. He was really angry. He worked himself to the bone to teach his disciples, but those two little bastards actually went out to have fun behind his back. They even made two dummies to fool him. Just whose plane is this? Hello. He guessed that he would spend all his money on this trip, and the key was that they didn't call him along. Degree. Damn it, he wanted to break off his father-daughter relationship for the 1000th time. Such a daughter could be taken by whoever wanted her, buy one get one free. Lone Moon rushed all the way to the nearest immortal city, thinking that it would take some time to find those two wastrels, but not long after he flew out of the southern land, he saw a figure flying toward him. Two silhouettes were hurriedly approaching. Their speed was extremely fast and a cloud of dust was kicked up behind them. Shining ran in front, still biting a biscuit in her mouth. She pulled Chef with one hand and grabbed something with the other as she ran. Before Lone Moon could react, Shining found him first, her eyes lit up and she ran directly toward him. Dad. No. Dad. Those 3 short words made her feel as if she had seen her savior. She stopped in front of him and smiled brightly. Father Nyo, we've missed you so much, she said, smiling brightly. We've missed you so much, Father Nyo. A day apart feels like 3 years. Chef followed up with a sentence. You are indeed the best Father Nyo in the world. There is only one, no other. Father Nyo is the best in the world. Father Nyo is immortal, your name will be remembered forever. Enough, you two are singing a duet. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He glanced at them coldly, suddenly having a bad feeling. Tell me the truth, what trouble did you two get into this time? Nothing. Both master and disciple shook their heads. Lone Moon glanced at them coldly and said, Hee. I'd be a fool to believe you. It's true, Father Nyo. You have to believe me. Shining blinked. We only bought a little food. As she spoke, she pinched her thumb and index finger, making a small gap, and directly stuffed a paper bag in her hand. Lone Moon reflexively took it, but before he could take a closer look, an angry voice came from the front. They're here. Catch that swindler. Everyone hurry up and stop him. Don't let him escape. Another one. They must be in the same group. Let's beat them up together. As he spoke, dozens of fierce-looking strong men flew over from the sky. Some were holding swords, some were holding magic tools, and some were holding kitchen knives, spatulas, and aprons. Before he landed on the ground, he directly attacked in the direction of the 3 people. Then, with a few thuds, they were repelled by the arrays around them. Lone Moon was shocked by them. The paper bag in his hand loosened, and in an instant, a thick stack of paper slips fell out and scattered all over the ground. He could faintly see that between a few of the recipes, there were all black and white promissory notes. His heart turned cold. He turned and glared at the 2 identical, innocent faces beside him. You 2 wastrels, what did you do this time? The master and disciple looked up at the sky, pretending not to know anything. But those people had already landed and directly surrounded them tightly. As they picked up the weapons on the ground, they panted heavily, all of them looking like they wanted to come over and cut a few times. Let's see, where can you run to? The one in the middle panted especially hard, and he was the cultivator with the highest cultivation level among them. As he panted, he pointed in their direction and said, You guys wait for me to catch my breath first. Lone Moon, I Ching, Shining, Lone Moon frowned. He glanced at the people present only to realize that their cultivation levels were not high, the highest was only at the late stage of golden core, the rest were only at the foundation establishment stage and even chi refinement stage. In an instant, his expression darkened even more. He turned and glared at the 2 again. Chef and Shining, a manager and an assistant, 2 cheats, How did they manage to be chased all over the ground by a group of low-level cultivators from the lower realm who were not even at nascent soul? How shameless could they be? The master and disciple continued to look up at the sky. Today's weather is not bad, it's a suitable day to eat, cook. What else could they do? They were in the wrong. Fellow Taoists. Lone Moon took a deep breath, suppressed the urge to beat up the two, cupped his fists and said to the crowd, I wonder how my two friends offended all of you to make all of you chase after them? If it's a misunderstanding, why don't we sit down and talk it out? Stop talking nonsense. The golden core cultivator, who finally caught his breath, glared at him and said, You're with them, aren't you? Everyone, don't listen to him, we'll talk after we capture them. The moment he finished speaking, the others once again raised the Dharma artifacts in their hands, conjured hand seals and made moves, directly attacking the three. It looked like reasoning would not work. Lone Moon frowned, directly released the suppressive force of a soul formation cultivator. In an instant, a huge pressure swept towards the crowd, covering the sky and covering the earth. The people who were just shouting to kill were stunned, their bodies stiffened, unable to move. A few cultivators with the lowest cultivation even directly knelt down directly. The scene was instantly silent, cold sweat broke out on everyone's foreheads. The golden core cultivator in the lead was even paler, his face full of disbelief. Soul formation. Supremacy. How could this be possible? They only cared about chasing after the two people, did not think about anything else. They did not think that the two swindlers actually knew a soul formation supremacy. Now can you tell us what exactly is going on? Everyone, Lone Moon's suppressive force was only released for a moment. Naturally, it would not be good to directly fight before things were clarified. Only then did the angry expressions on everyone's faces disappear. They looked at each other for a while, then the golden core cultivator gritted his teeth, stepped forward and replied, This supremacy, we did not mean to offend you, it's just that your two friends destroyed the treasures that we painstakingly collected for many years, and even smashed our pill room. Those are our life's work. As if thinking of something, some anger ignited in his eyes again. He glanced at Lone Moon, suppressed it and said tentatively, You are a soul formation supremacy, you must be a fair person. Even if they are supremacy's friends, I'm sure you will definitely allow us to seek justice, right? Lone Moon's expression darkened. He turned back to look at the two behind him. What did you do? Nothing much. Shining replied, We just accidentally burned some radishes. You shut up. Lone Moon glared at her, then looked directly at I Ching. Chef, you speak. I Ching glanced at his own master, then replied, That? Master and I just went to buy some snacks, then along the way we learned some new dishes. In the end, we accidentally burned the kitchen. What kind of kitchen? A kitchen where elixirs were kept? Father Nyo, don't worry, we gave you spirit stones. Shining raised her hand and added. Chapter 474. You're talking nonsense. As soon as he finished speaking, that golden core cultivator immediately said angrily, They didn't burn the kitchen at all, they clearly used that deviant fire to burn our entire pill room. Not only that, there were many finished pills and rare spirit herbs inside, all destroyed by this liar, this person. The others also began to accuse one after another. That's right, there was also the nascent soul pill that I spent a lot of money to buy, all burned by him. Yes, and my 1,000-year spirit heaven grass and 500-year green spirit wood. And mine, my benevolence fruit. And mine, supremacy. The golden core cultivator took a step forward. He seemed to have found his courage and asked in a deep voice, These two people destroyed our elixirs and spirit herbs under the guise of learning how to make gourmet food. They even burned the alchemy room we built together. Their hearts are really vicious. Even if you are a soul formation supremacy, you can't be partial to such evil people. Otherwise we will definitely sue Haoran Court for justice. The others also responded one after another, resuming their previous aggressive look. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He scanned the crowd, then glanced at the cookbooks on the ground. Then he roughly guessed what was going on. You mean to say that these two friends of mine were originally here to ask you for advice on cooking? That's right. A cultivator wearing an apron stepped forward and said, My Drifting Fragrance restaurant is the most famous restaurant in Immortal Bien City. The first place they entered was my restaurant, and they ordered more than 10 of our signature spirit food dishes. I originally thought that they were sincere in learning, so I passed the recipe to them out of kindness. I didn't expect that this was not what they were after. With that said, he even snorted coldly at I Ching, seeming to be very angry. Our drunken immortal restaurant too. And us? The others also started shouting, looking at Chef like they were looking at enemies. According to you guys, Lone Moon said in a low voice, he not only cheated you of the recipe, but also went to burn the pill room that you built together, and destroyed all your spirit herbs and pills. That's right. Everyone nodded hard, all of them looking righteous and angry. The more Lone Moon listened, the darker his expression became. Suddenly, he lifted the corner of his mouth and revealed a half-smile. So now, do all the cultivators think that I have a good character and don't have a temper, so you can fool me as you please? With that said, he released his suppressive force once again. This time he did not hold back and directly pressed down on everyone. Immediately, the surrounding cultivators all fell to their knees, as if they were under great pressure. Even the golden core cultivator at the very front was the same. His face paled. Supremacy, what do you mean by this? What do you mean? Lone Moon laughed coldly. Do you think I can't tell? I don't know who you are, but this friend of mine is a chef. When it comes to cooking, even 10 of you can't compare to him. As long as he has tasted a dish, he doesn't need you to teach him. He can cook it exactly the same way. You actually dared to say that you taught him the recipe out of goodwill? Ridiculous. Everyone's expression changed and their eyes started to drift. What do you mean by imparting recipes? Lone Moon glanced at the pile of promissory notes on the ground and continued, you must have discovered that he could tell the cooking methods and ingredients of every dish. You were unwilling to accept it, so you relied on the fact that you had more people and tricked them into buying your recipes so that you could cheat him of all the spirit stones he had, am I right? Everyone's faces started to turn pale, and they did not dare to make a sound. Let me guess. What else would happen next? Lone Moon's smile became colder. You discovered that although he could taste the difference between dishes, he might be able to taste the difference between pills. So you went all out and brought them to the alchemy room. You wanted him to taste the pills and then tell you the pill recipes so that you could obtain some pill recipes that other sects do not teach to outsiders? Everyone started to break out in a cold sweat. Not only that, you even had the sudden idea that since he had some talent, why not let him try refining pills directly? But you did not expect that he did not know how to refine pills at all. Not only did he not succeed, the pills that you wanted were accidentally burned by him, and the entire alchemy room was destroyed. His eyes darkened and he swept a glance at everyone. Everyone tell me, am I right or wrong? All the cultivators' faces were pale, as if they had been exposed, and they could not lift their heads under the suppression. You lied to my friend first and then tricked him into refining pills. You actually dare to ask me for justice? How shameless of you. The moment Lone Moon's voice fell, the suppression increased by another layer, and several people with lower cultivation levels were already directly lying on the ground. Supremacy. Supremacy, please calm down. Supremacy, please calm down. The people who were still angry and arrogant just now hurriedly begged for mercy with a look of horror. We were muddle-headed for a moment, that's why we did such a despicable thing. Supremacy, please forgive us on account of our first offense. We won't dare to do it again. The others also began to beg one after another. They had long since lost the confidence they had when they were chasing after him. They really didn't expect that with just a few words, the other party would see through their plans so clearly. Forgive you? Lone Moon snorted coldly. Just now, because of this matter, you wanted to beat and kill my two friends, didn't you? Why is it that when it's your turn, you want to forgive me so easily? Do you think I'm protecting you? The cultivators trembled and became even more terrified. This was a soul formation cultivator, he could turn them into ashes with a flick of his finger, so they trembled even more violently, and started begging even louder. But something flashed in the eyes of the golden core cultivator in the middle, and he immediately said loudly, Supremacy, please, on account of the Chi family, spare us, we're just disciples from the alchemy sect. What sect? Lone Moon subconsciously wanted to refuse, but his sleeve was tugged. His eyes darkened, and then he said with some hesitation, since that's the case, I cannot do anything, but you bullied my friend and swindled his spirit stones. What about the matter? We're still. Yes, it was originally his, we were foolish. Return it all to him. Everyone's expressions relaxed, and they immediately took out their storage bags, and began to dig out spirit stones, their eyes occasionally sneaking glances at the few people in the middle. As a qualified profiteer, Lone Moon naturally recognized the underweight look in their eyes. Hence he added, oh, I forgot to tell you that I've already made a mistake. The spirit stones that my friend brought out were temporarily lent to him by me, you guys better not count it wrong. Try missing a piece from me? Everyone's hearts turned cold, so they dug out even faster, not daring to miss a single piece, and even stuck a few more pieces. They were afraid that if they did not tally, the other party would find them for revenge. Only then did Lone Moon retract his suppressive might. The cultivators trembled with fear as they finished digging out spirit stones. Supremacy, we promise that we will not dare to do such immoral things in the future. Lone Moon responded. Then we will not disturb Supremacy, we'll take our leave first. Everyone bowed and turned to leave. Wait, he suddenly said. Chapter 475. Everyone shuddered and had to turn around, revealing a smile that was uglier than crying. Supremacy, what other instructions do you have? Lone Moon smiled at them like a spring breeze, scaring all the cultivators into lowering their heads. Yet he waved his hand and all the notes that fell on the ground flew into his hands, forming a thick stack. Since these recipes are meaningless to my friend, then there's no point in keeping them. His eyes darkened, and his smile became even more commercial. Didn't you say that these are your signature dishes? Then let's redeem these recipes. Redeem? Everyone hesitated. Yes, don't you sell recipes? We don't need them anymore, can we return them? Everyone looked confused, although that was what they said, they had already refunded the money just now. But seeing his serious expression, they did not dare to refute, and could only grit their teeth and nod. Yes. All right, I won't cheat you. Just return them at the original price. The prices are all written on these lists. Lone Moon picked up one and read, This is Aroma Restaurant's secret braised spirit beast meat, 1,500 superior grade spirit stones. Chef, go and collect the money from the boss. Yes, Father Nyo. I Ching immediately took out his storage bag and walked towards the person who was still wearing an apron. Oh, right, if you don't have spirit stones on you, it's all right, you can sign an IOU first. He waved the stack of IOU in his hand. Everyone, they felt so uncomfortable they wanted to cry. What kind of criminal gang was this? Lone Moon spent an hour before he returned the stack of IOU in his hand one by one, and replaced it with a new batch of IOU. Of course those people owed him. The IOU written by cultivators was different from those in the mortal world. These IOU were bound by spirit power, which meant that unless he voluntarily rescinded it or he died, it had to be returned, otherwise it would damage the cultivation of the person who made the contract. He roughly counted, Shening and the others could bring at most 2 months of food expenses, which was 20,000 superior grade spirit stones. But now he had at least 1 million spirit stones, which meant that he had more than 50 times the original amount, and that was without counting those IOU. Father Nyo, you're amazing. Shening immediately clapped. Chef paused for a moment, then started clapping along with Shening. Father Nyo, #1 in the world. Scram. Lone Moon turned and glared at the two of them. Don't think that I won't settle the score with you just because I got the money back. Normally, no matter how wasteful a meal was, it would not exceed 2 mid-grade spirit stones. In just one day, how did you guys manage to spend tens of thousands of high-grade spirit stones and owe a huge debt? Father Nyo, don't mind such details. Details my ass. How could a few 100,000 spirit stones be King details? Do you really think you have a mine at home? Yes, Fatty has a vein pearl. Shut up. If he had been any slower, even if he had a mine, he would have gone into debt. These two prodigals. Lone Moon kept the newly earned spirit stones in his hands. He had decided there would be no food allowance for the next month. Taking a deep breath, he regained his senses and said in a deep voice, Tell me, what did you discover? You want to deliberately provoke the anger of those people and force me to play this kind of lousy show with you? If he had not blocked in front of them, the two of them would have exposed their gloating performance just now. Although they were two cheaters with no integrity, they were not idiots, especially Shening, who was a person with a high IQ. There was no way she would fall for such an obvious trap. What's more, Chef was here. In other words, they did it on purpose. I don't say that. Weren't you very happy when you were counting the spirit stones just now? What's wrong with me collecting some spirit stones? Don't actors need to pay to appear? Celebrities' appearance fees were easily tens of millions. Him collecting a few million spirit stones was already considered cheap. Yes, Father Nyo is the best actor. Everything he says is right. They were just poor beggars. What exactly happened? It's those elixirs. I Ching took a step forward and explained in a low voice, Master and I originally wanted to go to Immortal Bien City to buy some snacks. On the way we met an injured cultivator. He asked us to go to a pill shop at the end of the street to buy a bottle of superior-grade qi-nourishing pills. So we went to buy one for him. Is there a problem with the elixirs? Lone Moon asked. There's no problem with the effects of the elixirs. They are indeed qi-nourishing pills that nourish qi. This is a common elixir used to replenish spirit qi. But we found that there was an extra medicine in the elixir. What medicine? Soul-nourishing grass. What? Lone Moon was stunned. Isn't the soul-nourishing grass a 7th-grade spirit herb? The qi-nourishing pill is a 1st-grade elixir. Using a 7th-grade spirit herb to refine a 1st-grade elixir, did that alchemist have too much money? Or did he not pay attention during the refinement and put it in the wrong place? Or was the elixir placed together with the soul-nourishing grass and contaminated with spirit qi? I thought so too at first. I Ching frowned and continued, but I tried to use the true phoenix fire to purify the impurities in the elixir, but the entire elixir turned into ashes. How could that be? Lone Moon was stunned. Your true phoenix fire should only be used to burn impurities like elixirs. Wait. He stopped mid-sentence and his eyes widened. Could it be that the elixir was not the leaves of the soul-nourishing grass, but the soul-extracting powder? Yes. I Ching nodded. Shit. Lone Moon shouted silently. The soul-extracting powder was also made from a part of the soul-nourishing grass. The soul-nourishing grass was a very special spirit herb. It only grew in places with dense yin qi. Although it was rooted in yin soil, its leaves were the main ingredient in refining the soul-nourishing pill. The soul-nourishing pill nourished the spirit and cultivated the soul. It was mainly used to strengthen the divine perception and also had the effect of repairing the primordial spirit. That was why it was an 8th-grade elixir. But the roots of the soul-nourishing grass were the exact opposite. The roots gathered a large amount of yin qi. Eating it would damage the divine perception and in serious cases, the primordial spirit. And the soul-extracting powder was a powder made from the roots of the soul-nourishing grass. The amount of soul-extracting powder in that elixir was very small. There was no way to detect it at all. I Ching continued. It was because Master said that the elixir was smelly that he asked Master to analyze it. That little bit of yin qi will not affect your cultivation. At most, it will leave a mark in your divine perception. So, Lone Moon looked at the two of them and narrowed his eyes. You deliberately used the recipe to make such a big fuss. You wanted to enter the elixir room of that shop to see if there was soul-extracting powder? That's right. I Ching answered righteously. Father Nyo, we put in a lot of effort. Shining looked serious. Effort my ass. Lone Moon exposed her directly. Forget about chef. Do you think I can't tell that you actually did it for food? Don't mind such details. What details? If you have the guts, don't hide the storage bag. Open it and let me see. Shining immediately took out the storage bag behind her and secretly stuffed it to chef. She shook her head decisively. What snacks? She had no guts in the first place. Do you think I'm blind? She already said it was snacks. Chapter 476. Father Nyo, we heard that most of the pills sold in that shop were made by themselves. That's why we decided to go to the pill room to take a look. I Ching continued, Master and I have checked that pill room. There is no soul guide powder. The problematic pills were all formed pills, and the boss said that the pills were specially made by someone else, and that they were the only ones in the entire immortal city, but he refused to tell us where they came from. So, you directly burned those pills to lure those people out? Yes. Even so, this has nothing to do with us, right? Why do you care about such things? Although the act of mixing soul-guiding powder into pills to destroy one's divine perception was indeed too evil, there were so many cultivators in the world, there would always be a few with bad intentions, they could not possibly care about everything, and when the time came, the heavenly Tao would naturally settle the score. Moreover, didn't you say that the amount of soul-guiding powder used was very small, and would not affect cultivation? You could have found a chance to expose it. Indeed, but the strange thing was that the seriously injured cultivator specifically asked us to buy the pills from that shop. I Ching frowned. I originally suggested that he buy the spirit molding pill, the spirit stones were not much different, but in his case using pills to restore the damaged meridians would be more effective, but he refused. You mean? Lone Moon hesitated. That cultivator might have known that there would be soul-guiding powder in the pills? I Ching nodded. Impossible. Why would he deliberately eat this kind of pills that are harmful to divine perception? Is he crazy? And didn't they say that the cultivator was still seriously injured? Did he want to die faster by eating this kind of thing? Wait. Then what about the cultivator? He left after eating the pills. I Ching's expression darkened. But his injuries were very serious, his foundation was already destroyed. A bottle of qi-nourishing pills could not even save his life. Even if he was fine, I'm afraid he would not be able to cultivate in the future. At that time I found it strange, so I left a tracking spell on him, but 2 hours later, he directly took out a talisman, only to see that the original golden talisman on the talisman had turned black, and there was a faint trace of death qi floating around. He's dead. Lone Moon stared blankly at the talisman. He realized that although there was death qi, there was no murderous aura. In other words, he committed suicide. Isn't his mental endurance a little too weak? It was better to live than to die a good death. Just because he couldn't cultivate anymore, he committed suicide? If that was the case, why would he still need to buy elixirs? No, Father Nyo, take a closer look. I Ching handed the talisman over. Lone Moon took it and subconsciously searched for the trace of death qi. He found that there was a faint trace of life in the death qi. It was the life of a newborn. Holy shit, he reincarnated? So fast. No, this speed. His soul hasn't even entered the netherworld yet, but he's already reincarnated. Yes. I Ching nodded. For him to be able to reincarnate so quickly, it must have something to do with the soul extraction powder. Perhaps there's more to it. Lone Moon's frown deepened. If that was the case, then they had no choice but to do something. All living beings in the world had to return to the netherworld through the river of forgetfulness and then enter samsara for no other reason than that no matter how long the soul stayed in the world, it would be damaged. Apart from the three of them and Shorty, no one else could see this. The soul rolled in the river of forgetfulness for no other reason than that it needed such a long time for the soul to return to its complete state. Immortals with high cultivation in the immortal realm indeed had the ability to send people into samsara. For example, when Chingu sent his mental demon into the world, he also did so without returning to the netherworld. However, such a soul was not complete. Shorty was fine because she was Mengpa. Other people might not notice any problems if they occasionally interfered with samsara 2 or 3 times, but the more they interfered, the weaker the soul would become until it completely disappeared. This was definitely not normal. What's more, a person's merits and demerits in the world were clearly recorded by the heavenly Tao. In the next life, which small world they reincarnated into, what kind of qualifications they would have, were all determined by this. If one interfered with samsara, it was equivalent to indirectly interfering with the rules of the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao was like the most precise calculating machine. Although it could also correct errors automatically, occasionally there would be people who interfered with samsara, and karma would be reflected back to those people. But if there were too many of such bugs, even the most precise machine would make mistakes. The heavenly Tao could not calculate all of them, and it would be strange if it was not messed up. It seemed that the reason for the power of the rules of this small world being messed up was not just because of Fatty. Perhaps it had something to do with something else. It's a pity that we did not find out where those elixirs came from. I Ching sighed. Lone Moon thought for a moment, turned and summoned his spirit sword. Let's go. Ah, where to? Wasn't returning to the southern land in that direction? Nonsense. Lone Moon waved the IOU in his hand and threw 2 words back. Collect the debt. I Ching, Shining, investigating and earning money at the same time, he was indeed Father Nyo. Lone Moon felt that Chef purposely hid his cultivation and burned the pill room and some completed elixirs, but did not lure out the people behind the scenes. It was entirely because those people did not take the 2 of them seriously at all, or this bit of loss was nothing to the people who refined these elixirs. If it was the former, then the appearance of him, a soul formation's supremacy, might be enough to cause the other party to be wary. He was afraid that it was the latter, then this matter would be even more troublesome. That proved that the problem of this world was shockingly serious. The 3 of them did not fly very quickly. After all, when those people signed the IOU, Lone Moon said that he would give them some time to raise the spirit stones. So the 3 of them spent an hour before slowly arriving at Immortal Bien City. Lone Moon flipped through the stack of IOU in his hand and took out the one with the largest amount. He casually asked for directions and walked towards the biggest restaurant on the street. Before entering the restaurant, he saw the Golden Core cultivator who was leading the group just now. Supremacy. Supremacy. That person was shocked, his expression changed instantly. How did you get here so fast? Collecting debts naturally has to be fast. Lone Moon waved the IOU in his hand. Why, do you want to renege on your debt? That person's eyes flickered and immediately returned to normal. No, 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 I dare not. He did not show any intention of reneging on his words or reneging on his debt. The three of you please come in. He respectfully invited the three of them in and even prepared tea. Supremacy. That cultivator smiled with a fawning expression. Just now when we returned to the city, I already sent people to gather spirit stones, but hundreds of thousands of superior-grade spirit stones is not a small amount. Supremacy, please wait here for a while, the people who collect the spirit stones should be back soon. With that said, he hurriedly gave a look to the person beside him. That person waved his hand, and a waiter walked in with more than 10 plates of spirit food, one by one placed on the table in the middle. You must be tired from the journey, this is my shop's signature spirit food, stir-fried with high-grade spirit fruits and spirit vegetables, full of spirit chi. I hope Supremacy will not mind. Chapter 477. Lone Moon glanced at the dishes on the table, his eyes darkened, but he had no intention of moving his chopsticks. No need, we are not here to eat. Yes, yes, yes. The man smiled more carefully. The spirit stones will be ready soon, very soon. He carefully looked at Lone Moon's face, something flashed in his eyes and tentatively suggested, Senior, as a soul formation Supremacy, your time is precious, you can't waste too much time on small people like us. There are many people who owe Supremacy spirit stones, how about I make a trip on behalf of Supremacy, and ask them to send the spirit stones here? Lone Moon looked at him ambiguously, but did not reply until the man's face became paler and paler, and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Lone Moon smiled and nodded. Eh. The man breathed a sigh of relief. I will go inform them now. With that said, he hurriedly retreated and kindly closed the door of the private room. Soon there was a sound of rushing downstairs. The restriction on the door has been activated. I Ching glanced at the door. Well, I felt it too. Lone Moon said indifferently, he didn't want to return the spirit stones, and now that he is back in his own territory he won't. Now he is probably busy getting reinforcements to deal with us. No matter who came later, it must be related to those elixirs, so he would look for this leader from the beginning. Anyway, we are here for this, let's give him some time. Lone Moon glanced at the dishes on the table, and surprisingly found that Xining did not move her chopsticks. Foodie Xin, you can actually resist not eating? Ah. Xining, who was lying like mud, was stunned, glanced at the spirit chi feast on the table and said righteously, I don't eat vegetarian dishes. As a foodie you actually have the face to be picky. But I Ching stood up directly, waved his hand and put away the vegetarian dishes on the table, and then replaced them with fragrant meat dishes. Master will probably fight later, and it will consume too much energy, why don't you eat these first? Muddy Shin instantly leaned against the wall, picked up the chopsticks and started to eat energetically. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched and he directly gave her a look. Even if we fight, it won't be her turn, right? What the hell is she doing? Chef, who was taking out the food, paused, stiffened for a while, then said seriously, spectating also requires physical strength. You just can't find a reason for her to slack off. Stamina my ass. You brainless fan. Also, where did you get these dishes from? I made it while I was being chased by them. Lone Moon, you even stopped to cook a few dishes in the middle of your escape. Just how careless were you guys just now? Wait a minute. Based on the cultivation of those people, they would not be able to catch up with them at all, much less Xining who was using cheats. Then they just happened to bump into him because, flips table. Degree, they were deliberately pushing the blame onto him and dragging him down with them. They were definitely doing it. These two wastrels. Father Nyo. Xining, who was eating, suddenly paused and looked straight in his direction. You're on the wall too. What wall? Lone Moon glared at her. Don't talk about the wall. I'm about to be angered to the heavens by you guys. The wall across the street. She pointed behind him with her chopsticks. Lone Moon paused and turned to look. They were sitting on the second floor now. Behind him was a window that faced the street. At this time it was half open. Through the window he could see the opposite side of the street. There was a sign erected with 2 display talismans on it. The picture on the left was of a man in white robes with black hair. He held a Fan Dharma artifact in his hand. It was exactly the same as him. Above the picture was a row of big red words. Soul Formation Evil Cultivator Wanted, Dead or Alive. Holy shit. Lone Moon stood up directly. What was going on? Fatty is beside you. Xin pointed to the other display talisman at the side. Indeed, the picture on it was of Fatty, but it was not a red immortal sect's wanted notice. Instead, it was a notice to look for the sect master of Divine Imperial Sect. Faintly they could see the words, held hostage by evil cultivator, dead or alive unknown. Reward for clues. And the two display talismans were a little old, as if they had been pasted for a certain number of years. Even pasted on the wall together. You guys are so fated. Fatty was indeed special. Fated my ass. Keep your Fujoshi look away. He was wanted by the entire immortal sect, alright? Wait. He glanced at the notice again. Why is it only me and Fatty? What about you guys? It was clearly the three of them who went to Divine Imperial Sect to save people together. Why was he the only one wanted? Forget about Xin. Anyway, others can't see it. Why isn't even Chef here? Huh? Chef thought about it seriously. This should be what Master often talks about. Character? Get lost. Motherf asterisk Kerr. Based on the current situation, those people had long seen through his identity. That was why they gave him the spirit stones so readily. He had been anxious to find the two cheaters who ran away, so he did not hide his appearance beforehand. He almost forgot that when Divine Imperial Sect took Fatty back to the sect, they had a conflict with him. More than 10 soul formation cultivators and traveling immortals had fought with him. Then it was normal that Fatty's disappearance would be the first suspicion on him, a soul formation cultivator of unknown origin. This was a little troublesome. They originally wanted to investigate that soul extraction powder. Now it seemed that the person the boss would call over would not be the pill refiner, but the people from Divine Imperial Sect. Indeed, before they finished their meal, more than 10 auras of soul formation cultivators flew over hurriedly. At the same time, several rays of array light flashed in the room. Golden spells lit up around them. A high-level trapping array was formed instantly. Chef, quick, keep the dishes. Don't waste them. We can eat them later. Xin hurriedly instructed. Yes, master. Chef waved his hand and kept all the dishes into his storage bag. Lone Moon. Your first reaction is to keep the dishes? Be more serious, hey? At least pretend to be schemed against. In the next moment, the array light shone brightly. Thick array spirit chi shot up into the sky and directly lifted the entire roof. More than 10 soul formation cultivators and 3 traveling immortals were already standing in the sky. All of them held Dharma artifacts and looked down at Father Nyo with vigilance. Spirit locking array. Lone Moon recognized the array under his feet. It was quite a big deal. This was an array that could lock cultivators' spirit chi. But it consumed a lot of spirit stones. The more spirit stones there were, the stronger the array. Looking at the spirit chi in the array, it probably cost a lot. Lone Moon did not move. He looked up at the people in the sky and laughed softly. He recognized half of them as the cultivators who took Fatty back then. We meet again. How dare you, heretical cultivator? A traveling immortal in the sky shouted. How dare you kidnap our sect master time and time again? Hurry up and hand him over, or don't even think about leaving this place today. Chapter 478. Hand him over to you? Lone Moon laughed coldly. And then let you blood sacrifice him again? Which one of your sect's cultivation level will be promoted this time? Everyone's expression changed instantly, a trace of panic flashed across their eyes simultaneously, and they immediately became even angrier. What nonsense are you talking about? They naturally could not admit to such things. The murderous aura on the traveling immortal intensified. You heretic cultivator, don't spread lies here. Whether I'm spreading lies or not, you know best in your hearts. Judging from their reactions just now, these people all knew about the blood sacrifice of the Fatty. Thinking of this, his expression became even colder. Using other people's flesh and blood to increase your cultivation, you actually dare to call yourselves a righteous sect? Ridiculous. Don't twist the truth here, hurry up and hand over Huize. That person was so angry that his face turned red, and his gaze became even fiercer. What, you're not calling him sect master now? Lone Moon's eyes darkened. Who is twisting the truth? Why don't you go back and ask that cultivator who just ascended to soul formation but was punished by heaven? Everyone was stunned as if they were poked at something and their faces turned pale. They must be thinking about the appearance of the divine dragon and the lightning punishment. Let me give you a piece of advice: if you do too many immoral things, one day you'll meet a cheat. Everyone's expression became more and more ugly. The traveling immortal's eyes wandered for a while, and then immediately said loudly, You don't have to be alarmist here, your spirit chi has been sealed, no matter how powerful you are, don't even think about moving a step. Hurry up and hand him over. Is that so? Lone Moon smiled at that person without a trace of panic on his face. No need to talk nonsense with them. The others finally seemed to be unable to wait any longer. Take them down first, naturally we'll be able to ask where Huizhe is. With that said, they directly mobilized their spirit chi to attack, and for a moment the sky was filled with the light of spells. Lone Moon looked directly at I Ching and said, "There's enough trouble today, I don't want to fight anymore, I'll leave Chef to you." Emma. Chef nodded, and after some thought he added, "Compensation for food expenses? In your dreams, get lost." "Oh, Master, I've tried my best." Shining, evil capitalist. In the next moment, a terrifying pressure that they had never seen before suddenly enveloped the entire immortal city. Before the soul formation and traveling immortals in the sky could react, they felt the spirit chi in their bodies stagnate. The spirit chi that was originally circulating freely dispersed, and they fell from the sky like dumplings. Thud 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 thud. It smashed into the ground a few times and was so deep that it was impossible to dig it out even if one wanted to. However, the pressure became even thicker and the few of them spat out blood. Even the sky darkened in an instant. For a moment, the wind blew and the clouds surged. The entire sky was filled with thunderclouds, as if lightning would strike down at any moment. What is this? Everyone was shocked. They had never felt such a terrifying pressure. It was not from a soul formation cultivator or a traveling deity. They even subconsciously thought that it was not the pressure of a deity. Lone Moon rolled his eyes at Chef. Damn it, the moment he heard that he wouldn't be compensated for his food expenses, this fellow didn't even put in his effort to fight. He actually released his divine might directly. This was practically slacking off. He glared at the master and disciple, then stood up. The spirit-locking array under his feet was still lit, but it did not affect him at all. He scanned the surroundings and his eyes fixed on a figure hiding in the alley. A stream of spirit chi shot out and directly pulled the person over. It was the golden core cultivator who owed him spirit stones just now. Before that person could react, he was suppressed to the ground by the spirit-locking array under his feet. Instantly, his face was full of fear. Senior, spare me." Lone Moon walked a few steps closer, squatted down and said in a low voice, "Let me ask you, the finished pills in the alchemy room, where did you buy them from?" What? That person was stunned and could not react for a moment. "Answer me honestly and I will let bygones be bygones. If you say anything false." He did not continue but smiled even more amiably. I don't dare." He thought of the miserable state of those soul formation and traveling immortals just now, and his eyes became even more frightened. After thinking carefully about his question he said, "Pills? Pills. Oh, we are just a small pill shop under the Chi family. We don't have much profit, so we produce and sell everything ourselves. We make losses all year round. We buy the finished pills from alchemy masters from all over the world. The sources are all different, so we buy from whoever has it. Because they did not make money, they opened other shops." "Then what about chi-nourishing pills?" "Chi-nourishing pills?" That person was stunned for a moment. Chi-nourishing pills are low-level pills, but usually alchemy masters with a bit of fame do not want to specially refine them. So only low-level disciples of various big sects will use them to practice. We also directly enter from a sect, but we do not have a fixed sect." That was strange. Where did those soul-inducing pills come from? And that cultivator who quickly reincarnated, how did he confirm that this shop had such special chi-nourishing pills? Lone Moon frowned. He did not expect that they had made a wasted trip this time. It seemed like he had to slowly investigate this matter. He got up and glanced at the few soul formation and traveling immortal cultivators who were about to be pressed into the ground by the divine aura. He could not be bothered anymore. He turned back and shouted, let's go back." A certain piece of mud lying on the table slowly got up. The three of them were about to fly on their swords when Lone Moon seemed to suddenly think of something. He turned to look at that golden core cultivator. "Oh yes, didn't you say you were going to collect spirit stones to pay off the debt? Have you collected them now? Quick, pay the money." "Shining, I Ching, cultivator, are you a devil?" After Lone Moon returned to the southern land, he continued to focus on training, oh no, on educating Fatty. Compared to the supreme grade trash in swordsmanship, Fatty's skills in alchemy, talismans, arrays and weapons were extraordinary. No matter how complicated the array was or how difficult the talismans were, Fatty could learn them in an extremely short time and master them. Moreover, Lone Moon only had to teach him once for him to master all kinds of mental cultivation techniques and Dharma spells on the same day. Others would need years, decades, or even centuries to familiarize themselves with spells, but he could immediately find the key to it and use it freely. Most cultivators had limited energy and would usually focus on one thing. Even if it was a mental cultivation technique, they would choose to focus on practicing it. But Fatty was different. He had learned everything about alchemy, talismans, arrays, and weapons. He had even practiced all kinds of mental cultivation techniques. Coupled with his 5-elemental spirit root, no mental cultivation technique would reject or be incompatible with him. Every aspect was top-notch in the lower realm. He had truly achieved moral, intellectual, physical beauty. Apui, alchemy, talismans, arrays, and weapons were all developed. There was no sign of him being biased. Apart from not being a fiendish cultivator, he was practically the next Boss Lands plug-in. Chapter 479. Rabbit, who had been accompanying a certain someone through bitter cultivation, felt a little puzzled. When they first entered the sword array, Fatty was still a weakling who couldn't even pass one level. He was often chased by the sword chi in the array until he cried out in pain, and his cries could be heard throughout the entire 10-level sword array. Just a few years ago he still secretly sympathized with this brother Fatty. Thinking about how under great immortal Lone Moon's forced training, his own cultivation was already improving rapidly, while Fatty was still at the same level, this was too pitiful. When Rabbit rose to the 9th level, Fatty was still in the low-level sword array. When it reached the 10th level, he was still in the low-level sword array. When it reached the 11th level, he was still in the low-level sword array. He originally thought that brother Fatty really didn't have any cultivation talent, and would probably struggle to survive in the sword array for the rest of his life, but he didn't expect that after leaving the sword array, things would suddenly take a sharp turn. When Fatty practiced the array cultivation mental cultivation technique, Rabbit was at the 11th level. When he practiced the talisman cultivation technique, Rabbit was still at the 11th level. When he practiced the pill and artifact cultivation technique, Rabbit was still at the 11th level. Even one day when he woke up one night, he actually found that Fatty had inexplicably become a soul formation cultivator, the aura of his body faintly pressuring him to the point of suffocation. Rabbit was a little suspicious that he had been hit by some sorcery, and thus missed such a big event. Otherwise, why did brother Fatty advance a whole realm in one night, and not only did he not feel it, he didn't even hear the sound of the tribulation thunder. In just a few years, brother Fatty mastered the 4 skills of pill, talisman, array and artifact, as well as the 5 mental cultivation techniques of metal, wood, water, fire and earth. And no matter which one he took out, he was at the top level in the entire cultivation world. As a cultivator of the lower realm, apart from sword techniques, Fatty basically had nothing to learn. The only higher level was immortal arts. Rabbit expressed that he was shocked. Fortunately, no matter how powerful he was, he lived under the demonic claws of great immortal Lone Moon. When he thought of this, he suddenly felt that everything was balanced. So when Fatty could finally graduate, Father Nyo arranged for the first graduation exam, to refine 100 spirit swords to pay off the debt. He had to make up for the flying swords he had wasted back then. Oh, that's right. When Fatty was learning about pills, talismans, arrays and weapons, he had written an IOU. He still had to pay them back in the future. Take it as a tuition loan. It was in this kind of negative asset situation that Fatty had, in just a few years, finally cultivated from a Fatty of more than 200 caddies to a big Fatty of more than 300 caddies. Lone Moon, I Ching, Shining, that's right, he had gained weight again. Previously it was already a ball. Ever since it reached the soul formation stage, it directly evolved into a hot air balloon. Even Lone Moon could not understand it. He had been abstaining from eating for the past few years. At most, Rabbit had smuggled a few carrots to him in the early stages. Later on he did not even drink much water. How on earth did he manage to grow without substance? With his current physique, he didn't even need to use sword kinesis flight when he went out. All he had to do was pat the ground and he would be able to bounce forward. Perhaps it was because Lone Moon had given him too much homework, but even Fatty's speed of weapon refinement had improved by leaps and bounds. In addition, flying swords were not like Dharma artifacts. No matter how high the grade was, it was still relatively easy to refine. Hence, his progress was very fast. Unfortunately, before Fatty had finished handing in his homework, someone came to the door first. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the originally peaceful southern land. Following that, a large number of spells lit up from the direction of the spirit river. Accompanied by a series of roars, there were also a few faint familiar auras. Fatty, who was working hard on weapon refinement, shook his hand. His expression darkened. He turned to look outside the house. The flying sword in his hand that was just about to take shape broke with a crack. It was rare that it had become a useless sword. Master, just now that was, Lone Moon frowned and looked down at the broken sword on the ground. He silently picked up a pen and added another line in his little notebook. The material for this sword is 10 spirit stones. This also counts. Great Immortal. Great Immortal. Rabbit ran over hurriedly and said anxiously, "Not good, there are suddenly many high-level cultivators at the entrance of the southern land. They have already surrounded the outside. They are destroying the spirit river." Lone Moon nodded. It's about time. When Shen Ying and Yi Qing sneaked out to Immortal Bien City to buy food, they had already been discovered by the Divine Imperial Sect. It was only a matter of time before they found the southern land. The reason why there had been no movement in the past few years was probably because they had been thinking of a way to enter the southern land. Master. Fatty turned to look at Lone Moon with a solemn expression, with a somewhat pleading tone. Go. Settle it yourself. Lone Moon did not stop him. Fatty, this little cheat, had long reached the late stage of soul formation these years, but there were still no signs of him ascending. Those experiences in the past still became a knot in his heart. Now it was time to untie it. Fatty's eyes brightened and his expression became more determined. He let go of the broken sword in his hand and took a step back. Then he cupped his fists and bowed respectfully to Lone Moon. He said very seriously, "Thank you, Master." He solemnly kowtowed 3 times. His aura instantly changed. It was as if all the softness and honesty of the past had been put away in an instant. Like a treasured sword that had been unsheathed, it instantly revealed its sharpness. This was the true appearance of a soul formation supremacy. Brother Fatty, are you going to deal with those people alone? Rabbit, who did not understand the truth, said with some worry. There are too many cultivators. The little demons have reported that there are dozens of soul formation cultivators alone. Just Fatty alone. Great Immortal and the others, aren't they going to help? Brother Rabbit, thank you for taking care of me these days. Fatty smiled at it. Without further explanation he turned and walked out the door. Rabbit looked at his receding figure, then looked at Lone Moon. His eyes turned in a daze. After a while he gritted his teeth and pulled Fatty back, saying loudly, "Wait. Brother Fatty, I'll go with you." Fatty was stunned. "Brother Rabbit, this matter has nothing to do with you. You don't have to, we're all beaten together. Brothers who eat carrots together. How can I watch you take risks alone?" Rabbit patted his chest and said righteously, "Besides, those human cultivators dared to invade my southern land. Do they think that I, a 12th level demon king, am a pushover? All these years, apart from cultivating, it was not that he did nothing else. At least he unified the entire southern land and became a true myriad demon king. Of course it was with his mouth. Brother Rabbit." Fatty looked touched. After hesitating for a while, he finally nodded and said, "All right, us brothers will go together. I'll summon the demon army right now." Only then did the two of them walk out together with a resolute and aggressive look. They had a sense of heroism. Just then Lone Moon suddenly opened his mouth to add a sentence. "After fighting you still have to come back to hand in your homework. Same goes for Rabbit." Clang. The man and the rabbit stumbled and almost fell flat on the ground. In the next moment, they immediately stood up straight and sped up their footsteps to run away, pretending not to hear. Bromance, you're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.